For the sake of this battle, a huge number of soldiers gathered from all over the world were forced to unite to protect their homes. The united forces of the world have come together as a united front in this new, brutal war against the dreaded army of the Demon Lord. This war lasted only 7 days, but the bodies of the soldiers of both armies covered the ground like a carpet, and their blood turned everything around them scarlet. In the end, when the forces were exhausted, it was time for each side's trump cards. The hero's squad, represented by the 3 strongest men, was sent to the battlefield, and the Demon Lord himself came out against them. But one blow of powerful demonic magic, and one of the companions is already ready to go out of action. The princess is not able to withstand this power. She hardly continues to stand on her feet. But no matter how much the hero worries about her, he can't do anything. He can't be distracted from his main mission for the benefit of the whole world. So the fallen and battered, but still determined princess asks you not to worry about her, and instead focus on the task of defeating the Demon Lord. Hiradiki is serious about actually doing this. With his trusty sword at the ready, he faces a formidable foe of both strength and size. Unfortunately for the Demon Lord, the hero is not going to back down. On the contrary, he is determined and focuses carefully. Before rushing into battle without a doubt, raining blows down on the enemy. After all, in this world Daki gained power. With the support of the princess, with the help of battles with opponents much stronger than him, for example, such as a huge dragon. Therefore, with a shout, the hero rushes to the attack, once again raising the sword. But the enemy was already waiting for his move. And now, stretching out his hand in the direction of the person, he forms a magic circle. Deki didn't expect this, but he has time to react. The ground behind the princess explodes with the demon's magic, and the girl helplessly screams and calls for the hero. But the battle isn't over yet. Despite the incident, Deki was barely injured, so he keeps attacking with all his might. Now it's time for the Demon Lord to be surprised. After all, swinging the blade wide in a jump, Deki ruthlessly makes his move, and the enemy is defeated. The demon can't believe it. To believe that he had fallen by the sword of some human creature. But his body is already cut into jagged pieces. The outcome of the battle is clear. A Demon Lord dies after being slain by a hero. Daki's companions look on enthusiastically at what is happening in front of their eyes. Finally, Daki made it through. Soldiers of the United Army raise their weapons to celebrate the winner. The Demon Lord is defeated. The hero who defeated him brightens up and thinks that he can finally return home to the world he longs for. But his thoughts about it are abruptly interrupted by clear memories. In his home world, Deki was a schoolboy who was bullied. Battered, and drenched in tears, he was shaking and begging someone named Murashima to stop. All this happened in the men's room. Kneeling on the floor, Deki begged to be released, still crying. Whoever set this up tells him to stop apologizing. With a grin, a bully who looks too old for a schoolboy asks if Deki did anything to them. He is surprised, but says no. Murashima's hang-on stands behind him, grinning too. Then the main bully confidently confirms that it is true Deki did nothing, so he has nothing to apologize for. Then the young man replies that this is why he asks Murashima to stop. But he can't do it. After all, just looking at the dike makes him lose all his good mood. Murashima says the guy in front of him is worse than any trash. The young man is speechless because of such revelations. The hang-on enthusiastically calls Murashima actually inhumane. And for a bully, this is the best praise. Confirming someone else's words, he grabs a nearby plunger. And with a nasty face he directs him at the dikes, intending to use them to clean his face so that the guy can at least look like shit. But Deki's had enough. Still sobbing, he gets to his feet and runs away. Murashima is surprised by this. But Deki doesn't get far, just locking himself in one of the toilet stalls. So Murashima kicks the door open and mockingly asks if Deki was going to run away from them like that. As Long Drawn calls to get out and kicks at the door, Deki leans over the toilet tank, shivering. He wonders why he has to endure such suffering every day. He's begging for someone to save him from this nightmare. Even in desperation, he calls out to the gods, and everything goes silent. Deki notices this immediately, and he starts looking around in confusion, forgetting about his previous fright. The space around them darkens. Suddenly, an unknown voice starts calling out to Deki Morishita, who is trying to figure out who is there. Finally, the question is, does the young man want to go to another world? Deki shouts loudly. To the bullies, it looks like the guy wants to scare them, so they mockingly say that Morishita is going too far. The ringleader peeks through the top of the stall door, threatening that if Deki doesn't cool down, he won't get away with just cleaning. But then he freezes, confused, because Deki was missing, and now he's looking up at the clear, bright sky. And he thinks awkwardly about how he remembered something unwanted. His next thought, though, was about his mother's curry. He wouldn't mind going home if it gave him a chance to try it again. Deki is distracted from his memories, both pleasant and unpleasant, by one of his companions. She calls the hero to rise up and respond to the army's jubilation. Grumbling ostentatiously, Deki slowly gets up, and he raises his sword high in the air, just as the people who followed him wanted. The soldiers cheer and celebrate the hero. This goes on for a while, but eventually the sounds fade away. In the distance from the former battlefield, the princess anxiously asks if the hero is really coming home. After all, this world still needs him. But Deki is sure that the restoration of this world should be left to its inhabitants, and the princess has nothing to object to his words. Still, she's nostalgic about how people change. After all, when Deki first arrived, he was hopeless. With tears, I ran away from monsters, fell under the spells of my allies. They didn't believe that they were really going to defeat the demon lord. Deki is embarrassed by the events of the past, so he asks not to think about them. The sorceress from the hero's group considers his departure a great loss. After all, in this world, as his savior, Deki could enjoy as much wealth and fame as he pleased. She doesn't understand why the young man wants to return to his own world so badly. But Deki is determined. After all, there is something that he has been yearning for all this time. My mom's homemade curry. This only makes the sorceress more perplexed. But the princess, albeit awkwardly, understands this reason. She thinks that's probably what homesickness looks like. With a sigh, Deki awkwardly crosses his arms over his chest. He doesn't want to say that the food in this world is really bad, because it's not really true. Or rather, it is simply not to the taste of a modern person like him. Then, finally, the sorceress begins to tease the princess, asking if she wants to say something to the hero. The princess is embarrassed by her pressure. But she can't do anything when the sorceress pushes her forward, wishing her luck. Standing behind the hero, awkwardly unsure of what to say, the princess ends up just saying goodbye to him, never being able to tell him about her love for him. Deki, unaware of her feelings, says goodbye in return without a shadow of a doubt, and leaves irrevocably. The sorceress can't believe that the princess just let go of her first love, and the princess herself, with an incredibly unhappy expression on her face, begins to cry. Then there's yelling because, after all, she wants her hero back. Meanwhile, Deki closed his eyes and prepared to teleport, but it didn't go as planned. After all, the move took a fraction of a second. He returned in the blink of an eye to the same toilet he was summoned from. This makes the young man feel disappointed. He thought that everything would be richer. But the shoe marks on the toilet stall door indicate that Deki returned on the same day he disappeared. And judging by the sunset sky, several hours had passed since then. In addition, its appearance has not changed, and this is quite problematic. After all, a full hero armor set isn't too appropriate in school. An idea occurs to Deki. After all, if his equipment remains the same, then he can also summon the status window. Even if Deki assumed it, he's still surprised that the window actually opened. A divine voice informs him that it is 6 o'clock on the evening of April 23rd, and the hero's current location is the men's bathroom on the second floor of Kasukiyama High School, and this ability remained with him. Then, looking in the mirror, Deki is going to find out what the situation is with his skills. The maximum level recognition is triggered without delay, and the result of evaluating the mirror is the highest quality in the otherworld, an ordinary item worth at least 2,980 yen. The fact that the recognition worked seems to frighten Deki. The hero starts to get nervous. He doesn't fully believe that his skills are still working, so he invokes the spatial storage. And the magic cube actually appears in front of him. Then Deki rummages through it without looking, his hand almost up to his shoulder. It looks for something specific, and it finds it. All this time, his school uniform remained with him. Even if he didn't think it would ever be useful again in the end, it wasn't a bad idea to keep it. Quiet streets of the modern city, a hero who has changed into his old school uniform, which looks too big for him. And finally, sweet home before your eyes. And most importantly, behind his door. An unforgettable mother's smile when she greets her son after school. Despite her too young appearance, This woman is the most amazing mom for Daiki. The opportunity to return her greeting brings tears to his eyes. He missed her voice so much, but his mom has no idea what Daiki has been through, so she's surprised by his long stare. But then his stomach rumbles, and Daiki realizes that he felt hungry when he calmed down. So he asks about dinner, which, as always, is already ready. My mother has a large pot in her hands, and from it, straight to Daiki's plate, goes the long-awaited, exciting, special mom's curry. Daiki enjoys him immensely, even if the portion on his plate looks like something between just an inedible mess and a malicious attempt to kill. But for him, who is crying with pleasure, this curry is the best in the world. His mother is pleased with the praise, even if she notices that her son does not seem to have tried this dish for many years. After the first serving, Daiki asks for more and immediately gets it. And when it's deep into the night and everyone's asleep, there's something he needs to check out. So Daiki puts on a tracksuit and leaves the house. He must find out how much of his powers he can use in this world. When it takes off, it leaves cracks in the asphalt, and its silhouette is even impossible to see at the speed it takes. The city streets are rushing by too fast. At the same time, while running, Daiki applies skills such as night vision, hand-to-hand combat, enemy detection, and concentration. And the result causes him to notice, startled, that his powers seem to have remained at the same level as in the other world. At high speed, bouncing off trees, the young man gets to a remote place in nature from the city. Practice has shown that the characteristics of strength and speed have also been preserved. In the end, you can't understand this from just numbers in the status of the body's state. You need to make sure in practice. Now that Daiki has deliberately traveled so far that no one is around, he decides to test his charms as well. First comes the body enhancement skill. The veins on his arms swell with overflowing power. With a single blow from his fist, something that was probably a rock before shatters into small fragments, and even the ground at the place where the supporting leg is placed is caved in, leaving a small crater. The effect and level is still the same as in the other world, so Daiki is awkward. He didn't expect that his target would actually shatter into pieces. Once the physical skills have cleared up, it's time to test your magic. Therefore, a magic circle appears in the air, created by the hero. Applies flight and can now move through the air at a speed of Mach 2. But in that world, only birds or monsters flew through the air, and here he had to be careful not to crash into the plane. Above the endless waves, the dike stops at a high altitude. This place is quite suitable for its purposes. After all, this is definitely not something that should be repeated at home. An eerie-looking sparkling ball of magical energy begins to form at his will. This is the strongest magic, called Thor's Hammer. A huge beam of power bursts out of Daiki's palm, lightning flashing in a dense mass destruction attack. The explosion that disturbs the water surface is almost like a nuclear one, with waves and splashes spreading far apart. This sight makes Daiki realize that using magic is quite dangerous. It definitely can't be used in everyday life, because if he didn't hide his power, then Daiki might end up turning into a demon lord himself. Thick, dark smoke rises from the place where the magic struck, even though the young man was aiming at the water. And in the morning, there's breaking news on TV that there was a small earthquake in the Pacific Ocean at dawn, and the government said that there is a possibility that some small country is testing small nuclear or other weapons. The news makes Daiki spit out his drink while his mom just listens to the host in fright. As a result, she has to wipe the table for her son, and he nervously thinks that in the end he will still be discovered because here humanity has things like radars. On the way to school, Daiki continues to think. In another world, magic is a natural phenomenon, but this is different, and if he ever accidentally soars into the sky, it won't be funny at all. He is literally yanked out of his thoughts by grabbing the collar of his school uniform. The same old bullies catch him again, and the main one among them is clearly unhappy that their victim used some trick to escape yesterday. But for Daiki himself, it's been a lot longer than a day. Therefore, he had completely forgotten about these three guys. He doesn't even remember the third person's name. Only Mirashita and Nakata's surnames are imprinted in his memory. Now, through the prism of his experience as a hero, Daiki sees that the guys in front of him are just small fry. At most, they would pass for a rank thieves, and these people are now threatening to force him to come back to the gym later to meet them in his mind's eye. This only makes Daiki sigh. It bothers him, but not out of fear. And when they do run into each other at the agreed place, the hooligans again yell at him and call him a toilet worm, accuse him of laughing at they talk among themselves about how Deki can really die if he overdoes it. But Murashita doesn't care. He says that no one will worry about such garbage. And even if Deki himself is now lying on the ground with someone else's shoe on his head, there is nothing but boredom on the young man's face. Because of course he understands everything and allows it to happen. But bullies do not cause him any damage. Besides, they don't stop trying to beat him, and it's getting tiring. Even the school uniform gets dirty. It can infuriate my mother. At the same time, the three continue to kick him and exchange dirty phrases, praising each other and forcing Deki to kneel and beg for mercy. But this is starting to seriously infuriate him. So the young man decides to finish with all this circus as soon as possible. So, just like in the old days before becoming a hero, Deki really gets down on his knees and asks for forgiveness. He even says that he will give all the money, so he begs you to stop hitting him. This makes the trio of hooligans laugh. They agree to stop this time as long as Deki remains their toy forever. But it will end very differently this time, because the young man had hidden the switched-on phone beforehand to show a recording of someone else's indecent behavior to the school's management. Therefore, in the end, they all end up in the office of the Deputy Director for Academic Affairs. And now that the recording is listened to, the school cannot ignore such strong evidence. Murashita's parents were called to school, so he came with his father. He is angry that his child has caused him so much trouble and makes a pathetic parody of his son apologize to Deki. At the same time, one of the remaining hooligans is standing slightly behind and is silent, but his cheek is swollen due to someone's punch. As a result, Murashita loudly says that he is terribly sorry, and Deki notices with absolute indifference, with a small amount of mockery in his eyes, that his bully seems to be really sorry. The Deputy Director of Academic Affairs admits that initially he thought about reporting to the authorities and expelling Murashita, because that would have been the best solution. But the victim, who is sitting here right now drinking tea contentedly, very much asked for a reduced sentence. Such words make the father of the bully come only more nervous and apologize on his own for his terrible son and hold him by the collar and convince him to bow. A nervous school administration official asks Deki if this is enough, and Deki, still playing his old role, agrees since everyone is so sorry. Then he picks up his phone. He finally realizes that even without magic, there are plenty of things that can be used in this world, and he's annoyed that he didn't think of it sooner. In Deki's opinion, it doesn't matter what kind of assholes these guys are, or how much Murashita is angry and grinning right now. Since it's been made public, they won't do it again. In fact, Deki felt a bit like being reborn because of one thing. He hates being bullied as a weakling. But that's what he thought before he was bound. Because I was a complete idiot. After all, the hooligans not only did not stop, they kidnapped him, tied him up, and took him somewhere in a car, threatening him with weapons, even if it's only a bit so far. Murashita says Deki crossed a line he shouldn't have, but you can tell he's nervous, while their victim absolutely does not care. He is dragged out of a car somewhere in the woods, his mouth and hands tied, and the kidnappers look really angry. Murashita even pulls out a tiny knife in an attempt to terrify Deki. He says that if someone is stabbed with a knife, that person will feel more heat than pain. The third of the hooligans, who is not called to the office for a conversation, laughs behind, goading the leader. But Deki isn't impressed. He was badly injured by a much larger sword, so a vegetable knife like the one he was being threatened with right now wouldn't leave a scratch on him. But for allowing yourself to smile, dykes are beaten with a bat right on the head. And even he gets hurt from this, and if he were an ordinary person, he would be on the verge of death from such treatment. Besides, it looks like a real crime. First abduction, then forcible detention. What is happening smacks of no longer the usual exclusion from school. In addition, the bullies continue to threaten that they will tear him to pieces, so that he no longer dares to underestimate them. They were really angered by how a person they thought was a toilet worm dared to deceive them. Deki is annoyed with himself for being so trusting and realizes that he shouldn't hold back anymore. Murashita's hands are clenched on the bat, and with his face contorted with fright, he swings with all his might, shouting to the victim to go to hell. An insane sound reverberates through the forest around us. For a moment, the leader of the hooligans thinks in ecstasy that he really did it. But then he notices his broken, unnaturally curved wrist and starts screaming nervously. From such a sight, the third bully gets scared. He tries to call out to the leader, but the bat bounces off, also deformed, and lands on his head and safely knocks out. Murashita is horrified by what the metal bat looks like after he hits it. He doesn't understand what's going on, and Deki is already free and talking to himself. Even in the other world, he was called naive, because when one of the 4 heavenly demon kings begged for his life, he unconsciously let down his guard out of pity and got stabbed in the back. He thought he had learned that lesson, but small fry like the homeworld bullies showed that he hadn't. Horrified, Murashita realizes that what is happening is due to the fact that yesterday their usually useless victim disappeared in the toilet. And no matter how much he thinks about it, such an event is too strange. Besides, no matter how hard they beat up Deki, he didn't react as usual. He also tricked them in the end, and Murashita would have sworn that their victim wasn't capable of that. Stuttering, the bully asks, "Where the hell did Dyke go?" He hears the question and seems to decide to answer honestly, because with a menacing smile, he stops hiding his muscles, causing his form to crack, and admits that he was in another world. And when the last of the remaining hooligans on their feet swings a broken bat and tells them to wake up the fuck up, right in the middle of the sentence, he is cut off by a short but powerful blow. Deki automatically apologizes, slightly worried that he's overdone it. Seeing all this, Murashita takes a few steps away in fright, and Deki doesn't even like to see him like this. After all, he kind of missed these guys. For a brief moment, Murashita thinks he's safe and starts laughing, but Deki grabs him, yanking him out of his seat. It takes aim. He hurls it high into the air, listening to the helpless scream. And after takeoff, there is always a landing. Deki watches indifferently as Murashita, who has climbed quite high, flies. Because guys like these hooligans were waiting for him in this world. After he returned, Deki's mood turned sour. But even though he doesn't want to admit it, once he's been called a hero, it doesn't matter what a complete jerk his opponent is. Murashita's flight reaches its peak, and finally it starts to fall. But right in the air, it is intercepted, helping to land safely. Because now, after everything, there's no way Deki can kill his classmates. For this, he would probably be called naive again. The former hero recalls his fellow sorceress. But he still asks if Murashita is okay, only then noticing his condition. All of the bully's bones are broken. That didn't seem to be the plan. Fortunately, Deki can use healing magic. Even if it's only mid-level, it should be enough to deal with such damage. After a while, Murashita comes to her senses, just like other bullies. At first, they don't understand what they are doing in the forest and why their bodies are hurting. But then the boss remembers that they kidnapped Deki and were going to pay him back for underestimating them. And after that, the wave of horror overwhelms them with new force. Deki himself, sitting on a tree branch above them, watches as the panicked bullies decide to stop bullying him, saying that it's not so interesting. The former hero used memory management magic on them. Even though the 3 of them had forgotten everything that had happened to them, Deki had left them with an overwhelming fear of him. So now he had dealt with both the demon lord who was destroying the world and those little hooligans. It's as if all his problems are now solved, and Deki enthusiastically thinks that he has finally returned to a peaceful existence. He bounces ecstatically on his way to school, thinking that he's had enough of this terrible life and is about to reclaim his youth in this beautiful, ordinary world. But trouble creeps up from behind, in the face of a strange girl, who is holding something that looks like a magic staff and sees Deki's aura. This makes her worry and wonder who he is. Chapter 2. The day after the incident with the bullies, Deki sits quietly in his classroom, and he thinks about what exactly he should do now that he's starting a new life. As a hero, he did nothing but fight, passing all the tedious work to his comrades. But now Deki is going to live in the modern world without ever touching anything useful. So what can he do with his exorbitant physical abilities and a certain amount of magic? The shocking realization comes quickly. After all, such a set of skills means that he can do anything. Deki even recalls his dream of becoming a baseball player, which he reluctantly had to give up as a child. He pulls out his phone, wondering out of interest what his income would be if he became a major league player. The figure is staggering. So he mentally decides that he will now aim for Koshien Stadium. Deki is so wrapped up in his new dreams that he misses the arrival of a transferred student who is about to introduce herself to the class. Very energetically, the girl calls her name Leela Sakaguchi. This is the girl who noticed Deki's aura this morning. It has a specific view, because the first thing it says after the name is to refer to its new class. She says that, first of all, the only thing they have in common with her is school and age, and tells the students to get it into their heads. Moreover, The girl demands to be treated like a princess from now on. And while the class is shocked silent, Leela turns up her nose proudly, pleased with herself. Even the teacher representing her feels uncomfortable. He says that the girl was born in Finland, grew up in Spain, and graduated from an American high school as an external student at the age of 10. She also has a mix of Finnish, French, and Russian blood. Daiki understands that their new girl is an incredibly powerful character. Leela then boastfully adds that she is fluent in Japanese, so people shouldn't hesitate to address her directly, but pointedly threatens not to waste her time on useless conversations. Then he points his finger directly at the dykes, which frightens him terribly. The girl resolutely moves closer to him. He looks at me threateningly, ignoring my questions. Meanwhile, Daiki thinks that he can't possibly have received an unexpected confession from a beautiful blonde immediately after returning from the otherworld. Does this mean that he grew up not only as a hero, but also as a guy? But his dreams are quickly shattered when Leela turns away without interest, wondering aloud what she must have thought. It was as if she could sense a mysterious aura emanating from Daiki, but it turns out that he is just a dull character. You can even say one of the side effects. The girl is not at all confused by the fact that she is perfectly heard. The new girl no longer pays attention to the dykes and points at a random other student. He's sitting in the lowest window seat that Leela wants because she hates being surrounded by a crowd. She also threatens that if she is refused, she will be forced to use force and send the poor schoolboy flying to nowhere. Even Daiki is embarrassed by the way the new girl threatens like it's normal. And considering that her orders are being followed, Leela is a really strong character. Perhaps she is a fan of Japanese animation and is under the impression. Then this behavior can be called quite normal. Even in the other world, there were many different types of strong characters. Daiki is surprised that there are such things in his home world as well. He allows himself to think a little about obscene things, but comes to the conclusion that Leela in any case does not arouse his interest, because her small breasts don't suit his tastes. But there is another girl in the class that Daiki is interested in. Not only does she have big breasts, but she is also the manager of the school's baseball club. Class committee chairman, Toka Murayama. With his power, Daiki will aim for Koshien Stadium and hope that love can even blossom between them afterwards. He's sure it's a perfect plan. Later, he and Toka talk, and she's not too sure about his sudden decision to join the baseball club. The girl asks if Daiki was in it in elementary school, but all he notices is her breasts. Daiki even nods in time with her movement as she walks, prompting Toka to ask if everything is normal. She might have already notified the club members, but it would be problematic if Daiki didn't have enough experience. Toka looks worried, and he doesn't understand why Daiki would be so cocky. But still, they come to the field, and the young man is given the necessary equipment. Today, they would just test his skills. So Toka wordly asks him not to think that he has to get in. He of course agrees, but his mind is already racing with dreams of being recognized as an amazing batter who as a rookie unexpectedly hits a home run from a top pincher. At this time, the player who is involved in the check is not happy. He doesn't want to waste the precious time of his training meeting the average rookie, so he decides to just scare him and throw the ball as hard as he can. For Daiki, it's like throwing himself into the center at a speed of 120 kilometers per hour. In fact, it was as if time had stopped for him. But Daiki is going to make a more or less natural home run, when unexpectedly, his level 10 sword art skill activates by itself. And in an instant, a monstrous blow hits the sword, and not just one. This causes dust to rise, and the player standing behind Daiki is at a loss, just like the current manager. And when the dust settles, everyone can see what happened to the ball. It's like he's blown up, and the others don't understand why. Only Daiki knows that because of his skill, the bat turned into a sharp holy sword. Tuko assumes that the ball was defective, and such a brilliant conclusion makes Daiki delighted. He even makes a mental suggestion to the manager, because his goal is to enjoy the youth of an ordinary person from beginning to end. And standing out too much is definitely bad. After all, if he wasn't careful, he might be chased like a monster. Speaking of which, it would be a big problem if his skills triggered on their own. Even if everything ended well now, it can be a big problem for everyday life. While Daiki is busy thinking hard, Toka says goodbye to him and tells him that they will see each other later. On the way home, Daiki is still thinking. It looks like Koshien Stadium will have to be postponed for now, even if it's bad for his romantic plans with the class chairman. something right ahead distracts you from your thoughts. Lila Sakaguchi is standing in the middle of the road, arguing with someone. Once again, the skill activates on its own, scaring Deki, now its long-range vision. The focus is set on the large breasts of the girl Lila is arguing with, and then Deki recognizes her. This is Abino Kagaya, a highly moral girl from their school. Shinto expert. In addition, it is an order of magnitude higher than the Dake. She is a professional Orthodox Miko. And as a bonus, there is a slender body and a size F from which Deki cannot take his eyes off. The argument culminates with Lila cursing and spitting, giving Kagaya a gesture that is clearly meant to be indecent. And then the new girl leaves, followed by a condescending sigh from Miko. Deki didn't expect to get into a showdown with a school idol. He thinks about how that blonde Shirbai might have sent Kagaya flying on the first day after her transfer, so he should stay out of it. But Kagaya gracefully turns to leave and notices Deka's presence, which it orders to stop. Surprised, the young man obeys and turns around. But he doesn't have time to say anything, because with a serious and displeased face, Kagaya approaches him, putting him at an obscenely short distance. She seems to be watching him intently for something, while Deki panics at the proximity. Because of the views that open up, the thoughts of a poor high school student are becoming less and less decent. And then Kagaya lets him go, saying that she just imagined it. A disheveled Deki looks at her with a blank expression. He can't help but ask what the hell, but Kagaya just apologizes for stopping him and says it's nothing special. Then he casually waves his hand as he prepares to leave. But Deki cannot miss it, because he decided to regain his lost youth. He doesn't know why Kagaya is interested in him, but this is his only chance, so he shyly calls out to the girl. And when she turns around indifferently, the pressure is comparable to that of a dragon. But Deki tells himself not to be afraid. He tries to force the words out, and in the end, he asks if Kagaya doesn't mind to become friends with her. But the girl only laughs sweetly at this request. And then, without holding back in rudeness, he curtly refuses, besides calling Dykes disgusting garbage. He is shocked by this. The girl admits that she was wondering what Deki was trying to say by spreading the stink of food waste, and tells him to know his place and never go near her again. Daki's heart is destroyed. He is amazed at how bad words are spoken by a girl who is famous for her image of a lady. Thankfully, the mind resistance skill works on its own again. My heart lets go a little, but it doesn't wipe away my tears. However, a skill that activates at such moments simply saves lives. For some reason, Kagaya is reacting again. Then he whirls around, looking incredibly creepy. Deki gets scared again. He tries to ask what's going on again when Kagaya stares at him from all sides. It even checks to see if there's anything behind the dike, but it doesn't find anything. Then she looks closer, noticing that the young man in front of her is a second-year-old, and asks if he is one of Lila Sakaguchi's acquaintances. Not understanding where this assumption comes from, he honestly denies it. But he explains that she transferred to his class. And then he reminds him that it was Kagaya who unexpectedly dragged him into this, and keeps staring. This makes the girl write something down thoughtfully, and then pass the paper to Deki. It contains her email address. This time, as if leaving, she says that she will wait for his letter. And the schoolboy, confused by this, completely forgets about all the cruel words that Kagaya said to him just a few minutes ago. He still doesn't understand what happened. But the main thing for him is the received email address of Miko, a high school student with an F size, in the evening already at home. Deki is sitting on his bed with an enthusiastic face. He was lucky to take advantage of the situation and meet Kagaya Abino, even if it was different from what he had imagined. However, he's not stupid enough to expect it to suddenly turn into a romantic relationship. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, which means that you need to make friends with her first. Deki is completely immersed in dreams that are out of touch with reality. He thinks that since Kagaya gave him her email address, she got a good enough first impression of him to become friends. And even if there's no hope with Kagaya herself, he thinks he can get her to introduce him to the other Micas. The thought of a group date with big-chested Miko Deki lights up with determination. After all, if he could complete this task, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he had conquered his youth. With this in mind, the address presented to him is far from an ordinary exchange of letters. It's a life-changing magic circle. Now nervous, Deki is going to write his part very carefully. He needs to make sure that Kagaya doesn't feel uncomfortable. So he starts with a light greeting. Deki writes that he is pleased to meet you, introduces himself, and explains that he is the guy who received the girl's mail today, and finally expresses the hope that they will get along. With all confidence, it sends a message. And then he hears the notification sound, not understanding who can write to him at this hour. It turns out that this was an instant response from Kagaya, even though it wasn't even 5 seconds after sending his message. Deki naively wonders what her first message will be like when once again one of his skills activates on its own. And this is the Death Curse Resistance skill. What makes Deki surprised and scared is that there is no reason for such a frightening skill to activate. He assumes that something is wrong with the divine voice since his return to his home world. But that's not what matters right now, it's the message from Kagaya. It's dry and absolutely businesslike, making the dikes harden. Getting straight to the point, she asks if any of his relatives are connected to the Imperial Guard, the Imperial Agency, or the Diviners. The young man doesn't understand the meaning of this question at all. But then he comes up with an idea. Kagaya herself must be the daughter of a prestigious family, and so it should check the origin even when communicating. Deki suggests that being a lady is very difficult. So he openly writes that his father works for a credit union and his mother is a housewife, so he has no connections with the departments listed to her. Then he adds a question about what kind of music Kagaya likes, thinking that he is safe now, and even continued the conversation by casually asking about her hobbies. Deki sends his message thinking that someone more experienced might have done a better job, but unfortunately, that's all he can do. The response is again instantaneous. This is already starting to raise questions, because this time is definitely not enough even to read the message. In addition, the skill is activated again, and this is once again resisting the death curse. Deki shouts at the divine voice, telling him not to frighten him and to be quiet, since he's fine. He decides to ignore it for now and read the message, but it's weird again. Kagaya bluntly says that he's not going to answer any questions, but she overwhelms him with her own. Now she wonders if Deki is a descendant of great historical figures like Tara no Masakado, Oda Nobunaga, or Amakusa Shiro. This is starting to infuriate me. Not only does Deki not know the first one listed, but the fact that the girl is not going to answer his questions makes all their correspondence useless. After all, he said he wanted to be friends, genuinely wanted to get close to Kagaya, and she refused to share even information about her interests. So he sends a message that he doesn't like such thorough inquiries and that he has his own goals, thinking that he will get an answer again very quickly. And at the Abino mansion this evening, silence is on the territory. Only Kagaya is kneeling in front of the burning candles. According to her cover story, Abino Kagaya is just an ordinary high school girl, but she's actually an exorcist. The Abino family has been working in the open and hiding in the shadows for generations, destroying Kimamoryu, the so-called evil spirits of mountains and rivers that live in the dark. Even among her relatives from the Abino family, who were born with superpowers, being the 10th generation, Kagaya has outstanding power. And even if that's what she says, the truth won't change. Moreover, thanks to their superpowers, she can tell at a glance when someone else has them. And Kagaya can tell that the guy she met was definitely gifted with a strange aura. Always and everywhere, magic power is invoked through the eyes. So if someone has the same power as her, then Kagaya will know just by looking that person in the eye, just like she did with that guy. But there was no hint of magic power in either his eyes or his body. Therefore, he is an unknown hindrance. Maybe Kagaya should have gotten rid of him from the start by using the blade hidden under her skirt, but she's glad she didn't, because first you need to collect information. She needs to find out who this guy is and what his goal is, so Kagaya is sure that he will get caught if she sets up a decoy. When the phone rings due to an alert, the girl knows that the target is hooked and activates its own technique. The skill of strengthening physical abilities, followed by the acceleration of reflexes. At the same time, she creates a shikigami that is transformed into electromagnetic waves in her phone. Sending a message is instant. Even if there was an incredibly low possibility that he was using the same shikigami as her, Kagaya would be able to respond to anything with his nervous system boost technique. Proud of herself, she thinks it will be checkmate for her opponent on the first move. Kagaya is already sure that she will discover all his plans. But the phone falls out of her hands due to an unexpected impulse. Her shikigami disappeared in the blink of an eye, and the fail-safe response technique didn't even work. The girl is amazed that the shikigami of the Ibano family who passed down to her by inheritance were defeated so easily. She knows that she underestimated her opponent. I took him for a random superhero who looked like a newbie. Kaguya should have noticed something was wrong when she sensed the anomaly. After all, this man had destroyed her Shikigami scout, so she had to treat him like a formidable superhero. And to think that all her intentions were already revealed, Kaguya isn't going to be careless anymore. Nervous, she knows that her next move will decide everything, and immediately responds to a new message that has arrived. But there is no attacking technique, just text. The girl does not understand what these words mean. She is sure that this is a trick to mislead her, and he's not going to let anyone fool him. So this time he's not sending a scout, but real combat Shikigami. Two wasp-like creatures set off on their journey, and they are also instantly destroyed. A gust of wind blows out the candles in Kaguya's room. The girl herself falls screaming from the force of the impulse. She doesn't understand anything, and is scared. She literally trembles at how quickly her opponent got rid of her combat Shikigami, like swatting away insects. Then Kaguya realizes that the person on the other side of the screen is a head taller than her. The difference in their strength is staggering. And then the last message arrives. The girl takes it for a counterattack, which is bad. Flustered, she tries to find a counter technique, hoping there's something left up her sleeve. But it sees the words of the message, that the young man just wanted to make friends, sincerely wishes to get closer. In Kaguya's mind, his dissatisfaction with the checks looks ominous, and the words about their goals at all terrify her. Her hand trembles as she lowers the phone. Kaguya stubbornly considered the guy whose face she didn't even bother to remember to be weaker than herself, and recklessly sent a Shikigami against him. She understands that even at that moment she suffered an absolute defeat, and she falls to her knees because she was the one who was checkmated. Tears come to her eyes from fear. At this time in the house of Deki, it's still waiting for a response. And waiting. And he waits, but starts to worry. An hour later, when there's still no response, he realizes that Kaguya isn't responding at all, and he wonders if he's messed up something. Deki realizes that keeping an eye on her was a bad decision, and his dream of a group date with Miko fades into oblivion, while he's sobbing in his room, frustrated at the missed opportunity. And Kaguya sits in his room, devastated, realizing his own folly and weakness. The thought in their heads is exactly the same. The two of them don't understand what they were waiting for. Chapter 3. The next day, Deki sits on a bench outside and sighs heavily about how he messed up everything. He's pretty sure Kaguya hates him now as he takes out the cat treat. Opening it, the young man complains to the stray cat in front of him that a group date with Miko girls is now just an unattainable dream, and assumes that this cat is also lonely. But then the animal is distracted from eating by some noise in the side, and he's afraid of what he sees. Therefore, it starts in exactly the opposite direction, surprising the dykes. Then he too is startled by what the cat has escaped Kaguya's sudden approach. Nervously, he wishes the girl a good morning. She thinks wordly that even though she might have approached him, because it would be strange to avoid him, she has no idea what to say. So she starts talking about last night, and says it's all her fault, because she hadn't realized what an amazing guy Deki really was. The girl is standing with her back to him. She is too embarrassed, and her interlocutor is confused. Deki thinks that he has improved her opinion of himself so much by feeding the cat. He doesn't even know it's because of the Shikigami he destroyed and how much the girl was scared by it. Thinking how pathetic she is, Kaguya squeezes the back of the bench with her hand and cracks spread out under her fingers. This scares Deki and makes him think that the girl is very angry with him. So he shivers and looks at her warily while Kaguya thinks. Not only did she show open hostility towards him earlier, but she also has no excuses for it. So she sees no choice but to give up completely. But the girl understands that, at the very least, she needs to find some kind of reference point in the negotiations. So awkwardly, she asks what Deki is going to do. Then the young man slowly stands up, making Kaguya think that he is about to attack. And with the face of a naive fool again offers to become friends. This makes the girl recoil. She doesn't understand why Deki is suggesting this. After all, there's no way a superhero of this caliber would get close to her without having an ace up his sleeve. The young man himself feels awkward. He doesn't understand her question, and says that there is no one like Kaguya among his family. And since Deki is going to play innocence itself to the end, the girl has no other choice. She's getting too close again because she wants to make sure, and that makes Deki confused again. because being so close to a beautiful girl is too much of a challenge for a high school student. He feels like he's about to die, even though he can withstand any mental attack. At this time, Kagaya closes her eyes, concentrating, and he can't believe it's true. She uses a technique with an incredibly low probability of success to look into a person's soul. This is hardly possible if the target doesn't want to reveal what's in their heart. So Kagaya is going to see if Deki will reveal his heart to her. And there's nothing in his mind right now but thoughts of being friends with her, flowing smoothly into obscenities about Miko and big breasts. Such a sight makes the girl literally jump, as far away from the Deka as possible with a face full of disgust. She perceives what happened as a mental attack, but does not feel any danger, and still can't believe that Deka doesn't have something up her sleeve, and he just keeps saying that he wants to be friends. The girl takes up an attacking stance, calling Deki a shitty piece of shit, and his danger detection skill activates on its own, making you worry. But suddenly Kagaya stops. After all, this thought had occurred to her at the very beginning. Since Deki is an unrelated superhero, there is a chance that all this happened by mistake. And from the very first time they met, he genuinely wanted to be friends because Kagaya is also a superhero. So the girl asks with tension if Deki is an independent superpowers owner, but in Japanese it sounds twofold. And the guy reads exactly the second meaning of the word, considering that he was called empty-headed. To which he sincerely replies that, to be honest, more likely yes than no. This causes Kagaya to mistake Deki for one of the wandering heroes, which everyone does alone, while the young man himself awkwardly recalls how often even his own mother calls him a fool. The girl knows what it's like to go through all the difficulties of life itself. For her talent and beauty, she was raised in isolation, making Kagaya an example to follow. Eventually, her peers stopped seeing her as an equal, and a real friendship with someone else became a dream. Her family, even her parents, were too busy fighting for position in the clan, and superheroes of her generation saw her only as a rival. To face the truth, Kagaya admits that she doesn't have a single friend, and so she truly understands Deki's feelings. Besides, since he's not involved with anyone, there shouldn't be any problems. So Kagaya waves her hair. He tries to remember what Deki's name is, using the word shit in his variations. The guy patiently corrects her, saying that he is Morishita. Then the girl declares that his application was considered and accepted. Deki doesn't understand what this means, so Kagaya arrogantly explains that he will become his friend. This makes him thrilled, because then his dream of communicating with the girls from the temple will become possible. But the girl has a condition. Since they are friends, they should be equal. This means that they will communicate regardless of the difference in status. Kagaya asks if he agrees to such a condition, and Deki of course agrees, because he doesn't know that he's the one with the higher status here because of his power. Kagaya, on the other hand, is well aware of this, as well as the fact that in a good way, she should have insisted on asking him to teach her something. But the girl is sure that it is not suitable for her to beg someone. Meanwhile, Deki thinks that Kagaya's character isn't as bad as he first thought. Now that everything is settled, the girl says they need to get to know each other better, and offers to arrange a trial period for today. If they're really good for each other, they should be pen pals first. And since they're friends, Kagaya is going to share one of his secrets. It hits the dikes. He thinks enthusiastically about what it might be. But Kagaya isn't going to reveal her past to him, because it might be risky. First, she wants to conduct a small investigation to find out if this person is really worthy of trust. It's better for the two of them. So out loud, Kagaya declares that from now on, he will write like a normal she. The rules for their trial period are simple. If Deki spoils her mood, the game is over. But they work both ways. The trial period ends at midnight. Deki seems really interested in this challenge game, so he agrees to the terms. Kagaya then leaves, offering to try to get along for the day, and finally saying that it's nice to meet you. For the first time in a long time, she's in such a good mood. She even wonders how long it's been since she last felt like this. With her phone ready, she admits that even she wanted a friend. During the school day, Becky stares at the phone screen in horror, not understanding what the hell is going on here. Because Kagaya had already left 252 unread messages this morning, along with 12 other notifications. Moreover, most of what she wrote was a single word in a message that didn't carry any information. And if Deki doesn't have time to answer something, the girl immediately calls him and accuses him of harassment. He's genuinely surprised that this is what Kagaya meant by her usual behavior. Deki even thinks that his heart might break, even if it's for the sake of his shared future with the Miko girls. But an unexpected activation of his mind shield brings him to his senses, reminding him that he is a hero and will not give up his dream for such a small thing. He is distracted from his thoughts by a shout accusing him of being completely useless. This is loudly expressed by Leela, who is served coffee with milk, adding a sweet bun with red bean paste. The classmate who did this apologizes. This is Maida, who Deki was friends with in junior high. Now the boy is used as a footrest, and he seems to like it. So Deki decides to pretend that he didn't see it, especially since that's not what he needs to worry about right now. He has more important things to do. In her classroom, Kagaya sits all alone, holding her phone in her hands. She mentally rushes Deki to answer, and is glad when the message from him comes back. A simple chat makes her heart beat faster. She is absolutely happy to have a pen pal. But from the outside, it looks rather ominous. Her classmates notice that Kagaya is a bit strange today. By evening, the message counter from her reaches 1-619 plus 82 alerts. Deki lies exhausted on his bed, his fingers feeling strange, and there's something wrong with his head. When the phone vibrates again, the young man jumps up in horror and frankly asks to leave him alone. But he picks up anyway and gets congratulations from Kagaya. He passed the pen pal test, so she's happy to congratulate him. Only then does Deki realize that it's already midnight. If everything goes as it should, then being promoted from a pen pal to the present won't be such an unattainable task. Kagaya says it's better than being a worthless piece of shit, and Deki can only awkwardly agree with her. The girl enthusiastically thinks about how great it is to be able to communicate about anything without holding back, and this means having friends. The next thing she says to a confused and disgruntled Deki is a very dirty wordplay with his last name, which includes even more references to shit. He's getting more and more uncomfortable listening to this, and Deki wonders why the fuck they call this girl a lady. But ignoring all the unpleasant things he just heard, Deki changes the subject and asks what was the secret Kagaya promised to tell him. Then she remembers her promise and says that most likely Deki already knows it. But she still asks the tense guy not to be surprised when she reveals the truth. And then she confesses that in fact she has no friends at all. This causes Deki to shed silent tears, completely unsurprised and clearly upset by the quality of this secret. What Kagaya said means that Deki was able to become her first pen pal, which is something to be proud of. At first, the guy hopelessly agrees. And then he realizes, if Kagaya doesn't have anyone to correspond with, does that mean she doesn't have any Miko friends either? And she's going to carpet bombard him with messages on his phone every day. This is bad and doesn't fit his plans, so Deki decides to leave the ship while it's still possible. Still in desperation, he asks if Kagaya even knows people like her fellow Micas. But there's no one in the girl's phone book except her family, and now Deki. He knows with resignation that the game is over and the dream of a date can be said goodbye. Unaware of other people's misgivings, Kagaya admits that she is very happy that she was able to make her first pen pal. And then he says that he can express gratitude. Deki agrees again and tries to ask his own question. He remembers that Kagaya mentioned that if he didn't want to continue, they might end up trying to be friends. So he tries to find out, not really sure what to say. What would happen if he wanted to stop being pen pals or something like that? He wonders if everything would be fine in that case. Kagaya replies that it won't work out that way now, because they've already become friends and friendship doesn't have a cooling off period. Still, Deki tries to insist. So he asks what would happen if he still wanted to finish everything. Without delay, Kagaya replies that then he will die. A sharp blade appears out of nowhere in her hand, and Deki feels that this is not an empty threat. Now all he can do is laugh nervously into the phone and hear the girl's satisfied laughter in response. Unknowingly, he had stepped on a landmine by getting involved in this relationship. Finally, the sun rises. By some miracle, Deki convinced Kagaya to keep the number of messages to a minimum and limit calls to 1 day. In addition, now he is going to consider that romance has sprouted and the search for a partner is in the past. But sometimes, when she and Kagaya meet in the school hallways, she gives him sharp glances, fighting the urge to text him. Things had gotten so subtly complicated, even though all Deki wanted to do was enjoy his youth. As he walks around the school in frustration, thinking about this, something catches his attention. The cross-shaped keychain on your phone glitters in the sun. In the courtyard of the school, Deki sees Leela Sakaguchi and warily thinks that another strange savage has appeared. In just a few days after the transfer, she had already become the full ruler of the class, and almost always surrounded by her followers, so seeing her alone like this is very rare. By itself, the all-hearing ears of the underworld skill is activated. It seems that it was activated because of Deka's attention to Leela. He doesn't want to eavesdrop, but he's still a little curious about what she's talking about. So the young man stops and hides around the corner. Leela reports to someone at the other end of the screen that the infiltration was successful, and asks doubtfully if these are really Vatican orders. This causes Deki to pop out of his hiding place in surprise. Moreover, Leela continues, talking about the reluctance of the local anti-demonic organization to cooperate. They are not enemies of the people Leela is acting for, but they are not friends either. Although the girl did not expect to be received with open arms, the guy doesn't understand what I'm talking about at all. Leela continues to talk seriously on the phone. And finally, she promises that her mission will be accomplished in the name of the Dominion, the Majestic Angels. The words hit Deka's ears like thunder. Then he understands what's going on. In fact, Leela is one of those who suffers from 8th grader syndrome. And it looks like a serious case because she keeps saying weird things about America standing up to them, and the Crusaders still having some leeway. Then, continuing her report, the girl states that the ghosts are more active than expected, probably because the spread of chaos is too strong. Beiki can't breathe from laughing, because the sudden tension and all these serious speeches are even painful to listen to. Finally, Leela hangs up the phone and seems to be praying, saying that everything is according to God's will. The young man starts as he hears footsteps approaching. Leela also jumps up when a new voice is heard nearby. Another girl approaches, addressing Leela. She says it's a full moon, and the Dominion has time to loaf in a place like this. But Leela retorts that the same can be said about her interlocutor. Deki is shocked. He suggests that this is the debut of another schoolgirl with 8th grader syndrome. And even if the guy mentally asks for pity on him already, he still looks out again, because he is interested in what the new face looks like on the stage. The truth is horrifying. After all, the girl who came is Abino Kagaya, who gravely declares that the Dominion has its hands free, but if they start a mess in her garden, Kagaya won't let them get away with it. Leela doesn't look impressed by such a thinly veiled threat. Deki, on the other hand, has a hard time listening to this incomprehensible conversation. His heart is literally breaking from the mental damage he's taking. Suppressed laughter brings tears to my eyes. Kagaya says that he's not going to screw up too much, which Leela takes as a challenge to a competition with the highest catch. Proud of herself, Kagaya says no. After all, unfortunately, she has plans for today. She made a promise to her dear friend. Leela is surprised to hear this, and Deki doesn't believe he was mentioned in that exchange. Leela condescendingly remarks that Kagaya is rather carefree since she has a friend, but she says that in such a situation, it is worth worrying about someone else, and will just pray that tomorrow morning will come. Deki lets out a sigh of relief when this strange conversation ends. Little did he know that under the most ordinary circumstances, his beautiful Kagaya would also be unlucky enough to have 8th grade syndrome. So when he runs away from school, he wonders what will happen to him if he doesn't leave this ship as soon as possible. And then he goes on to say obscenely that the best option is to plan a romantic relationship with the class committee chairman, Tuka. Standing grimly alone, Kagaya notices an ominous wind rising. It's already dusk, which means it brings a miasma of chaos. So she has to prepare herself and get one of her shikigami. But the miasma is far away. That's why Deki's house is still peaceful. His mother calls him, and he says that using the phone during dinner is a sign of bad manners. But the guy fatally explains that if he doesn't answer, the writing person will only become more annoying. Then the mother wonders if messages are coming from a friend. And when Deki admits that a girl writes to him, his mother looks shocked, and then upset that her son was finally on the path to adulthood. Too tired, he stares at the bursting phone and replies that it's not like that at all. At least since the first day, the number of messages has greatly decreased, so he will keep his promise. After thanking her mother for dinner, Deki goes to her room. He remembers girls from another world and thinks that they were quite normal. The faces of the princess and the great enchantress appear before his eyes, making him miss them a little. And then Deki looks at his watch and realizes that it's too late, and he promised that he would call Kagaya himself today. Then he immediately dials her, and she picks up the phone, not forgetting to reprimand Deki for being 2 minutes late, once again using insults instead of his real name. He apologizes for this accidental slip-up. He asks if everything is alright since they're talking so late. Kagaya doesn't understand what the problem is. Then Deki, still trying to escape, says that if it brings her trouble, they could stop it all. In his mind, he prays to the girl to understand that it is inconvenient for him here. But Kagaya remains impenetrable and says that she doesn't have much free time either. She just gives her first friend a few dozen minutes at the end of the day, and that's it. At this time, the girl, dressed in a bathrobe, is sitting in what looks like a small bath. Annoyed, Deki seriously considers hitting the girl with magic. After this thought, he remembers something, and with a sly face, he says that he saw her at school today with Lila Sakaguchi talking. In his eyes, this was a throwback to the games of the 2's 8th grader syndrome. But Kagaya looks surprised by the topic and climbs out of the water. Deki is trying to imply that Lila was acting rather strange. Then the girl remembers that these two are in the same class, and admits that in fact he knows Lila's secret. This makes Deki wonder now. He wonders if there's anything else besides the syndrome. So he asks what the secret is. Mocking, Kagaya replies that Lila has no friends at all and calls her a laughingstock. All Deki can do is cry silently and mentally send them all to hell. Kagaya then talks about Lila's acquaintances and compares her to a persistent itch. According to the girl, the newcomer has a rather intimidating character, so much so that it can be called incredibly hostile. Deki understands that she is constantly getting into confrontations with people of her own level, but doesn't voice this conclusion. And when Kagaya is about to continue the conversation, Deki interrupts her, supposedly suddenly noticing that it's too late. Besides, there's still school tomorrow, and the bright moon is already so high in the sky. Finally, they hang up, saying goodnight to each other. And Kagaya assumes that it's causing him quite a bit of trouble, knowing so much. She presses the spell sheet to the wound on her shoulder, and he admits that, even fleetingly, he wants to enjoy the most ordinary youth. The next day at school, Deki sees something unusual in his class. Lila's enthusiastic hangers-on are concerned that she came to school injured and ask what happened. Her arm is in a cast, and one of her eyes is covered with a blindfold. She is embarrassed by the attention, but says that nothing special has happened, and also says out loud how annoyed she is by someone else's reaction. Deki takes the appearance of an eye patch for another manifestation of the off-scale 8th grader syndrome, feeling sorry for this unfortunate girl, while she screams at her subordinates and sends someone to get a cappuccino for her. Inwardly, she says with alarm that she could not have guessed the appearance of an earth spider. This defeat is a terrible failure for a master of her level. The all-hearing ears of the underworld are reactivated, allowing Deki to pick up the murmur. He remembers that just yesterday Lila said something about hunting, so it assumes that the background of the current state will be a battle with someone. At this time, classmates simply enthusiastically watch a beautiful blonde girl with an eye patch, calling her an exquisite creation. Their enthusiastic dance around the naughty girl drinking cappuccino in a pack with a straw is beyond Deki's comprehension. After completing the lessons, one of the classmates is called to carry Lila's things. For the right to take a strict medal case, a fight is almost unleashed. But Lila gives everyone a slap on the back of the head, forbidding them to touch her things without permission. All of her damage had already evaporated. Deki is surprised that even the blindfold was removed because it's too fast to change the setting. However, he doesn't care. He assumes that because of everything that's been going on lately, she just wants to escape reality. After all, Deki himself perfectly understands this feeling. On the way home, Atsai is that he would also like to heal, but now he is more concerned about the desire to feed the kitten to which he has become attached. A black fog comes through from the forest, and the city is quiet. Kagaya walks through the empty streets, worried about Lila Sakaguchi's serious injuries. The Dominion quickly heals any damage due to its divine protection or something similar. Therefore, the girl was completely cured in just one day. But the Earth Spider is a top-ranked ghost that even Kagaya needs to request help from the clan to defeat, and its appearance clearly shows how far the destruction has gone. Suddenly, she feels something. He turns abruptly, reacting to the strong presence of someone else. She's worried because this can't be happening. Then he looks out into the park. This is the same place where he and Deki talked earlier, and Kagaya knows that strong superhumans attract ghosts. She clenches her fists in fright. Even if her new friend is far from an ordinary person, the Earth Spider is still on a completely different level. Besides, Kagaya knows that he can hardly help him in such a situation, being even weaker than Deki. And yet, after a few seconds of hesitation, she rushes to help, hoping to at least buy him time to escape, even if that's all she can do. Meanwhile, Deki finally finds her kitten. The poor creature, terrified and screaming, is tied to a tree in a sticky, careless mass that can't be broken so easily. Deki is angry. He wants to know who dared to do such a terrible thing to a harmless cat. And while he frees the animal from captivity, his danger detection skill is suddenly activated. Of course, the hero who overcomes the demon lord easily dodges the blow of an unknown enemy, jumping high in the air and doing a backflip. The freed cat is held tightly to his chest, and a tight jet of the same mass that the animal was tied to the tree cuts into where they were just standing. The spray splashes apart. Startled, Deki doesn't understand what the hell is going on here. He lands and walks even further away, trying to figure out who shot the sticky thread at him. Thin but strong, they hang everywhere, and drops of loose mass swell on them in places. A huge furry spider opens, its glow-in-the-dark eyes. Strands of web extend from the creature's mouth. Its web, strong and large enough to match its owner's size, was hidden in the park's treetops above, but it's visible now when Deki looks up. But just because he sees it doesn't mean Deki understands it. Seeing a spider this big isn't what you'd expect in a world without fantasy elements. Terrified, the cat sits quietly in the arms of its rescuer. Deki says out loud that new species like this huge spider have become quite dangerous, but he corrects himself, realizing that this cannot happen either in Japan or in any other country in this world. Words that used to seem strange and silly pop up in his head: exorcism, chaos, and the earth spider. Now he finally understands that neither Lila nor Kagaya has any 8th grader complex. They really had absolutely serious conversations, and it took Deki personally seeing the monster they were discussing to know that. Now that he knows exactly what the girls meant, it makes him smile a little nervously. Chapter 4. Kagaya knows that the Earth Spider is a top-class ghost that neither her older sister nor her niece could defeat. Even Lila Sakaguchi, who had fought to the end, came out of this battle with terrible wounds. Despite her hopes to delay solving the problem for a while longer, the rapid spread of chaos leaves no choice. All this symbolizes the imminent revival of it. The Great Familiar, the Nine Tails, an evil god that the Ibino family had kept sealed for generations, a colossal spiritual creature. Even though it sounds like the Kagaya clan is doing something good, the reality is different. They are more likely to plead with the evil deity, calm them down, and make them do nothing. And the victims are innocent lives. After all, they offer the nine-tailed Miko as a sacrifice. The clan isn't an exorcist sealing evil gods at all. The true form of the Ibino family is the tools they use to curry favor. And low-level ghosts whose appearance accompanies the rebirth of an evil deity are part of the exam and Miko's duty. More precisely, the destruction of these ghosts. A brutal exam for the role of the one who is most suitable for the role of the victim. The candidate for sacrifice is determined based on the number of spirits destroyed by him. And Kagaya, among all the candidates, is the closest to this terrible death. In terms of talent, she won't lose out to anyone, but she's terribly lacking in experience. And more problems than ghosts are caused by other candidates, supposed companions who stand in her way. After all, Kagaya doesn't know how to negotiate at all. In addition, Lila Sakaguchi appeared. Holy Church assassin summoned by the Dominion whose main goal is to destroy the ghosts. For someone like her, fighting is like breathing. And that's the worst-case scenario for Kagaya. The Earth Spider as well as the evil god himself. If the Ibino main family and the Dominion worked together, they would have a chance to deal with these two. But in the war to seal the evil god's past, there were so many casualties that it caused everyone to lose the will to fight. Between the risk of losing high-level exorcists or just one Miko, the choice is obvious. The main family will choose the second option, and her unthinkable decision to end the hunt prematurely last night actually means that Kagaya has given up trying to survive. Since it was unavoidable, she decided that she wanted to experience youth for a moment and spend time with her friend. Thinking about her youth now, she feels sad. After all, this is the first time that she is running with all her might to help a friend. She quickly runs through the park, but sees in time that she has reached the Deki. And the sight that opens up to her leaves, No doubt that the enemy is really an earth spider. Kagaya is afraid that she's late, but she knows that she arrived just in time. The spider attacks, and the girl is very scared. But as she dodges the sticky thread, she knows she can still move. In her eyes, it's not a bad thing to sacrifice yourself to save a friend. Kagaya is about to use the last will technique, sealing the gods with the assassin's fire palm. After all, since her life will still be wasted, with tears, she decides to use it as she wants. But one punch makes her rush useless, because Deki easily kills a spider. Confused, Kagaya drops all of her talismans. A fountain of blood gushes from the place where the ghost's head used to be. Only then does the guy notice Kagaya's arrival. Still with the cat in his arms, he turns around and smiles, telling her how good it is to see her. But the girl, trembling, unable to speak, falls to the ground in a rain of blood and entrails. They leave the park together, and they end up in the nearest cafe. With the cup in his hands, Kagaya is still shaking too much. When asked how she feels, she says that everything is just great. Much more important is how she can't believe Deki's story. He told her about the alternate world. Even though it's difficult for Kagaya, all she can do is believe in such a fantastic thing. She compares someone else's story with her own experience of fighting ghosts from an early age. And so the story of Deki no longer seems incredible. While she is being shown magic, Kagaya decides to treat it as an art that is different from their system of techniques. In any case, there is no other way to explain the origin of Deki's powers. So is its independence. And the guy himself mentally says goodbye to his ordinary youth, because he did not think that such a thing was happening in this world. Briefly, Kagaya told Deki about her family's duty to seal the evil gods and Miko's rivalry. She also cuts off the guy's overly rosy thoughts on this matter. Even if he can't tell you about the sacrifices, he doesn't want Deki to carry such a load. He thinks about it, because according to Kagaya, the spider was a very powerful monster. Confused by his one-punch defeat, the girl nevertheless confirms. Deki is puzzled by this, because in the other world, the big spider is barely stronger than low-level beasts. This would be a daunting task only for novice adventurers. There seems to be a fundamental difference between the two worlds. So he asks for permission to check Kagaya's status, explaining that it's a skill, and she can resist him just by thinking about it. Kagaya sees this as a technique to read the human mind. Then Deki opens her status, and it only notices the first level. Even if Kagaya's stats are incredibly high for the first level, if she were an adventurer in another world, she would be considered a novice. In addition, her skills are also weak. Deki suggests that the girl's characteristics were enhanced through hard work. His own level is the highest here, 78. Summing up the information, Deki realizes that Kagaya is a loser in her family, and it pisses her off that she can't object. After all, she was still inexperienced, had killed the fewest ghosts, and was much weaker compared to Deki. This shows how honest the girl is. Deki then assumes that Leela is also quite strong, which causes Kagaya to react. She starts shouting insults at the new Dominion girl, calling her a liar and mean, and ugly at the same time. Deki has to take it back to calm Kagaya down. They return to the fact that participation in the competition for a girl can end badly. And that makes Deki think. In the other world, after killing a monster, its soul turns into experience and is absorbed by a human. In this way, people become stronger and level up. But when Deki killed the spider, nothing changed. While burning the corpse, he thought it was an accident, but it seems that there is no concept of leveling up in this world. So, if the difference in her and Kagaya's strength is explained by the level, she just needs to increase it. The girl awkwardly asks why Deki is staring at him like that, and he replies that he has an idea that needs to be checked. They go back to school when it gets dark. Kagaya looks around warily. They go up to the roof, and the fact that Deki doesn't tell her the details of the plan makes her nervous. Even if she was told that it would help her level up instantly, she doesn't believe that such a thing exists. After all, they are not in the game. Then a strange idea occurs to her. She suspects Deki of planning to do something obscene to her. And when he turns around, saying that this place should fit, Kagaya is already preparing to use the technique that never made it to the Earth Spider. This surprise frightens Deki, but the technique is dispelled by his death curse dispelling skill. Ben Kagaya figures there's nothing he can do. He starts to undress. This causes Deki to cry out in confusion and stop her. Ben Kagaya accuses the guy of making the wrong impression because he seems to have lusted after her before. Now Deki doesn't understand whether the girl treats him well or badly. He silently applies the skills of optical concealment, and spatial tearing. Kagaya recognizes them as a technique more advanced than the secret art of disguise, although Deki admits that he's not that good at it. It would just be bad if someone saw what they were doing. Now it calls the repository, and the cube's appearance surprises Kagaya again. Deki suggests that she think of it as a warehouse, where you can store anything and still take it out and put it away for storage whenever you want. She admits that she can no longer be amazed by everything, and asks what the guy is going to get while he searches for something in the cube. He had sharpened it as a rainy day food supply, but now he might not be able to get it, but still finds and quite fresh. Then he pulls the orc's head out by the hair, or rather, its entirety. And when the body is pulled out completely, he throws it on the roof of the school. The body turns out to be alive and jumps up. Looking around, Kagaya immediately jumps back, asking what kind of ghost pig it is, but this is an orc commander, which the girl needs to overcome, and then perhaps something good will happen. From the spiritual power, it's clear that the monster isn't a small fry. If Kagaya wasn't careful, she would die. But she's determined. Deki gives instructions about strengths and weaknesses, but is interrupted in the middle, because Kagaya isn't going to rely on him. She's not his student. They are pen pals equals to the end. The orc screams, and he attacks first. His paw flies forward, but Kagaya dodges and throws talismans. She sees that the opponent's movements are slowed down, and the monster fell for simple art. She applies the death burn, while shadow hands climb out of the roof. They grab the orc by the legs. Deki is impressed. Kagaya's first step is to immobilize the enemy. But this is not enough. The orc breaks free. Its strength is staggering. A weak skill won't hold that much power. But Kagaya is calm. She sees that the orc is focused only on what is happening below, while it burns like hell from above. Deki is surprised by the combination of technique and fire magic. In addition, orcs are weak to flames. He didn't expect the girl to know this. It seems that Kagaya found this weakness by instinct, using her sense of combat. This shows that you can't measure someone's strength with just numbers. Approaching the orc from behind, the girl insults him. Then he stabs me in the back of the head with the blade. Now the monster is finished. A fountain of blood spurts from the impact site. The body, now dead, falls face down. Kagaya is obviously used to fighting. It wasn't that difficult for her. You can skip to the main point. A light mist begins to come out of the orc's body and be absorbed into Kagaya's body. She learns the ghost's spiritual power. Deki's guess was confirmed. If these are monsters from another world, then you can get experience for killing them. Kagaya is experiencing this right now. Her level went up to 4th. The girl feels that some kind of force fills her body, and he sees something in front of him. The status window became available to her, probably due to absorbing a soul from another world. Deki explains that this is a skill that allows you to translate characteristics into numbers for clarity, and Kagaya finds it treacherous. But the guy is more concerned with the question of why the effects from another world showed up at all. He decides not to use things from there carelessly, and evades the question of what his status looks like. While exploring the panel, Kagaya notices something, and says that the numbers here are incorrect. But Deki knows that's impossible. It turns out that he worries for nothing. Kagaya just doesn't agree with displaying her 3 dimensions here. Finally, the guy learns the secret that he likes the volume of her breasts. He neutrally says that he did not pay attention to this part, and there may well be discrepancies. Then he changes the subject, asking how Kagaya is feeling. And that's a good question. Not only did her numbers increase, but her abilities also improved. Looking at a bird soaring high in the sky, the girl sees what she couldn't see before. Not only my vision, but my other senses were sharper. She's not using any reinforcement skills right now, so they can check something out. Deki hands her a rock and offers to squeeze it. Kagaya thinks that she should have the strength of an ordinary high school girl. And even if her abilities as an exorcist are much higher than human ones, the stone crumbs falling from her palm only confirms her feelings. It was as if she was no longer human. Abino asked Marishita over the phone what skill points he was talking about, and the hero asked her to look at the status window, where she should see the points she got when she leveled up. That's where she can distribute them among the skills she wants to use. The girl realized that it works almost the same as and in the game. If she wants to focus on combat strength, then she should choose reinforcement skills or taijutsu, and if she wants to learn magic or complex skills, then she should choose something like magic reinforcement or night attention. And Abino followed the instructions of the youth, noticing that there are even real skills here talisman arts exchange, and she asked what skills she should learn. Because in video games, she followed the strategy of maximum efficiency. Since skills are based on the distribution of points, if you learn everything in a row, then in the end she will not achieve mastery in anything and will lose, to which Morishita suggested that she plays games too much, and the girl replied that she is not gloating at all, but since she has no friends she will not be able to learn anything. She spends twice as much time playing games as the others, and unlike games, she can't choose everything again, so she doesn't want to make a mistake, and asks him what skills she should learn, to which Morishita said, "It depends on the number of defeated monsters, and in this case, to search for prey, she will need the skill of detecting the enemy." Abino activated the skill, and was a little stunned because she sensed something that she couldn't detect before. A change in the spiritual power in the area. After that, the girl thanked Morishita for her help and informed him that they would meet up later. And the young man was slightly taken aback by the fact that she hung up. Is this really her gratitude? Although he did not expect it from this girl. But he believed that even selfishness should have some limits. Morishita wasn't on the phone with Abino for the first time in a long time, and it was the most peaceful night, but her stats had improved significantly. So there were practically no monsters in this world that could compare to Senpai in strength, and now she can do whatever she wants. And on the street, the young man met another one, an oddball named Layla Sakaguchi that Senpai had briefly told him about. But it seems that this girl is also a genius representative of the world of 8th grader syndrome. She is part of an organization called the Dominion that destroys demons and the enemies of God, sending assassins freely to all countries of the world. And without caring about the balance of power, they indiscriminately wreak havoc everywhere and disappear. So it seems that they have an incredibly bad reputation among exorcists, so Layla informed him that since he was a member of the exorcists organization, if he stares at her like that, it means that he wants to become her slave, and she can give him a slap in the face every day as a reward. Morishita had decided that it was the ultimate reward for his fellow practitioners to stare at Layla in reverence. And Senpai had mentioned something about it, but when ghosts upset the normal order of things, people with weak minds break down, and people who were originally evil get even angrier. And this morning the news had said that when ghosts upset the normal order of things, people with weak minds break down, and that a killer had escaped from the police station, and from that moment on Morishita decided that he should try to avoid trouble. At this time a suspicious person appeared near the school, and a police officer told him that if he was a parent, then he should go to the reception area. But instead of answering, the stranger pulled out a revolver, and students in the class clearly heard a shot. A minute later, a man appeared in the school with a revolver in his hand, and no one could understand what was going on, and the students wanted to know who he was, but the bandit raised the revolver and fired into the air. He ordered everyone to calm down immediately and threatened those who resisted with immediate death. And Morishita thought with annoyance that he had not yet set the level of the danger sense skill on people. He realized that this was the escaped criminal who was mentioned in the news this morning, and now Morishita was involved in serious trouble, and while the bandit continued to threaten to kill the young people in the class, the hero looked at him appraising Ly and determined that the bandit's fighting abilities were no higher than those of a novice. But nevertheless he is armed with a gun and is very dangerous for ordinary students, so the best choice would be for him to deal with him immediately, but if possible, would like to avoid unnecessary attention, and so he can simply direct a dangerous person to another dangerous person. He turned to Layla Sakaguchi and suggested that she intervene in the situation, because now is the time when she needs to lose her temper. But the girl replied that the Vatican strictly forbade agents to use weapons, and she is sure that the police will soon intervene, but for now you can just watch. And the bandit, meanwhile, he ordered all the girls in the class to line up in front of him. The raider had said, in an untied voice, that since the tower was shining on him anyway, this would be his final act. He was going to have a good time with the schoolgirls. And Morishita had decided that the bandit was very predictable. The rapist laughed and remarked that there were a couple of great diamonds in this class. And besides, there was a junior here somehow. He was carefully choosing who to start with, and Morishita wondered if he should stop him right now. But if he casually angered the bandit, he might get even worse, more dangerous. It was difficult for the maniac to choose a girl, because they all looked equally good, and he ordered them to undress. And for each one who refused, he promised to kill one of the guys because they were completely useless to him. And hearing this threat, the chairman of the class committee, Murayama Toka, asked the bandit not to kill anyone because she was ready to get undressed. After these words, the girl resolutely took off her outer clothes, surprising not only the rapist with her forms, but also her classmates. And the bandit seemed satisfied and told the other girls to undress too, because it would be pathetic and unfair if the rest of them did not concern themselves. The thug was surprised to ask Layla Sakaguchi why she didn't undress, and the girl replied that she didn't see the need to do this. And the rapist looked at her carefully, saying that he thought she really shouldn't undress, because she was still such a child that he didn't even want to touch her wood. Layla was offended by the bandit's words and took off her clothes, asking if he thought he could still say that he wouldn't want to touch her after seeing that slender and graceful body. The villain smiled and said that she was still a child. There had to be a limit to how flat someone could be, and after that, he made a choice, stating that he would start with a big-chested girl with glasses instead. The rapist confirmed that he was choosing Murayama to start the fun and told her to hurry up and get naked. The girl looked at the bandit and said that she did not want to fulfill his demands, and the rapist was extremely outraged by this refusal. The bandit called Murayama a harsh word and rushed at her, but Marishita's swift shadow darted in front of her. The young man leaned over the chairman and asked her to control herself. He apologized for not stopping the bastard earlier. Then he helped the girl up, and she reported that her pain was subsiding. Then Morishita clenched his fists and turned to the bandit. Everyone thought that the guy was crazy, and Morishita decided that since it had come to this, he had no other choice, and he would just knock him out faster. And the bandit asked him if he didn't see a gun in his hands. The young man replied that he did not notice such trifles, and the rapist asked to tell him his name, because he likes to remember the names of those he kills before going to bed, and this makes him very excited. The young man replied that his name was Morishita Daiki, and advised the bandit to remember this name well. The bandit laughed and pulled the trigger, saying goodbye to him. When Morishita activated the skills Reflex Acceleration, Foresight, Calm Mind, and Taijutsu, he thought that the scoundrel had aimed directly at his face without hesitation, and of course, he could withstand even the magic of the explosion, and the bullet wouldn't even scratch him. But still, the others might start asking questions, and after a while, he would be able to do it. 0.003 of a second after the shot was fired, he decided that he would play it out as if he could dodge the gunman's bullets. By using illusion magic, Morishita decided that he would make him survive the hell that would be suitable for a geek like him. The stunned bandit suddenly saw a scary and ugly monster in front of him, which is an illusion. And while the bandit was assessing the situation, Morishita dealt him a devastating blow, using illusion magic to lock him into an endless loop of his worst nightmares, forcing him to enjoy it for the rest of his life. But Morishita was now deciding what to do with the atmosphere, and he informed the stunned observers around him that he had been practicing the mysterious Eastern martial art of Aikido through video tutorials. Delighted with this outcome, Layla suggested that Morishita should be swung in her arms to celebrate the victory. And when his classmates supported the idea and threw him into the air, thanked God that they were such idiots. The police soon arrived and apprehended the culprit, who was accidentally overpowered by a student with martial arts experience. Morishita breathed a sigh of relief and looked around to see Layla Sakaguchi waiting for him at the school's exit. The hero asked her about the reason for the attention, and the girl asked him to become her teacher because he managed to dodge a bullet today. But these words bothered Morishita, because now his abilities besides senpai were revealed by another obstacle. Layla told him that he was being modest when he said that he had learned the skill from video lessons, because in fact, he probably has a black belt, and therefore he should give her his phone number and email address so that she can contact him at any time and take a few lessons. Layla firmly stated that he would become her teacher and she would follow him everywhere and steal the secrets of his mysterious techniques, to which Mauritius sadly thought that in life, selfishness is a disastrous pain in the ass. Abino Kagaya took a deep breath because the day of rebirth was approaching, as was the day of choosing a victim. The victim's candidates were her older sister, she, and her 5 cousins, and the rules were simple. The maiden who destroyed the least number of ghosts would be devoured alive by the 9 tails. And at the moment Abino is in last place, and considering how far behind she was, the choice of victim at the next selection was a foregone conclusion. The older sister said that it looked like she was still wasting her strength, But Abano objected and said that she didn't think that the last preparation before the hunt could be called useless. Her sister explained that she meant that she would soon be devoured by the Ninetails anyway, and that she should not enjoy the rest of her pale life as a girl, to which Abano reminded her that the decision had not yet been made. The older sister said that right now the difference between Abano and her, who was ranked 4th, was 30 heads, that she couldn't really close the gap before the next selection was graded, and Abano accused her of getting grades because she was stealing the ghosts she had weakened from her. The older sister said that this is a vile slander, and the gap that she will never be able to overcome is due to the fact that she has a little talent and experience, unlike Abano. And speaking of experience, it's likely that Kagaya-san is still a virgin, and she has heard that before the Ninetails devour the sacrificial maiden, she is defiled by small demons. Abano excused herself, and said that she didn't have time for idle talk, and the older sister thought that the younger one was still making futile attempts to avoid sacrifice. And of course, if she had a few more years left, she could become a decent practitioner, but things would be much sadder for her. Abino stated that by continuing her training and using the skill points she gained, she was able to upgrade her talisman technique as well, and through experience, her attack power doubled. But Yuhi-san replied that this was complete nonsense and impossible. There was no way her abilities could have improved so much out of nowhere, but Abeno added that in terms of experience, her experience was so outstanding that she couldn't even imagine it. At this time, Layla, while hunting for ghosts, found it strange that she could sense their presence, but found too few of them. She had simply used the Abeno family's victim selection process and had literally come here to plunge her spear in and destroy the ghosts. While the family dealt with half of the ghosts that appeared each time, she would need to take on the remaining half. She remembered that the Vatican, His Holiness himself, had ordered her to come here. And the priest had told her that no matter where her mission took place, as a dominion, she had to think about how to show her power in all its glory. Layla wondered if the Miko of the Abeno family were going to gather together to hunt ghosts. But based on the principle of organizing the selection of victims, it would be impossible. Does this mean that someone unexpectedly raised their level? Abeno Kagaya realized. With the enemy detection skill that she had upgraded to the maximum, she was able to sense any spiritual force within a 300-meter radius, and the ghosts definitely noticed her. Just like her cousins. From the very beginning, her ability to sense spiritual power was outstanding, and as soon as she was the first to spot a ghost, she was pushed back, and her prey was taken away before she could get close to it. In other words, she was used as a hound, and it was despicable. When it comes down to it, she just needs to break out of their encirclement and catch her prey. She saw the young demons, and Kagaya understood exactly how they hunted their prey. Normally, she would gently roast them alive, but today they would not be spared. Yui was very angry at her sister's success. She didn't understand how Kagaya-chan had managed to do this, and how she had unexpectedly obtained such incredible power, which only meant that they would probably need to take special measures soon. Marishita lay on the bed and felt relieved that his school life hadn't changed much. Except that, in addition to Senpai, there was another hindrance. But he didn't want to be the hero who saved the entire class from a terrorist. Instead, he just wanted to enjoy the most ordinary youth. His thoughts were interrupted by a phone call from Kagaya, and the young man asked her if she was all right. And the girl suddenly asked him to guess what she was wearing now, and after listening to vague answers, she said that now she is only in black underwear, and it is transparent. Kagaya added that she was very sexually aroused today, because she had single-handedly destroyed about 100 ghosts in today's hunt. And now she was not in last place, but in first place by a large margin. And remembering the silly expressions on her cousins' faces, she wanted to laugh. She reminded him that they were pen pals, and Morishita said that pen pals definitely don't talk about underwear. And besides, high school girls wear white instead of black underwear, so could she stop talking about it already? Then, Abeno Kagaya decided to move on to the main topic of their conversation. She told the young man that her body under the transparent underwear is very hot and it throbs, and she just can't stand it. Therefore, she's going to be a bitch today, because her depraved form is simply incredible and he'd better get ready. To which, Morishita replied that this behavior is not a bitch, but just a maddened pervert who is sick in the head. And how did she just decide on a phone prank? Kagaya explained that in the commotion with the fugitive that happened the other day, Morishita-kun had something stirred up when he saw his classmates in their underwear. so she thought that he might have a serious obsession with underwear. Well, since he wasn't interested in it, then it was transparent to her black underwear is no longer necessary. The girl informed Morishita that she had taken off her bra and had impressive, beautiful, firm breasts, and was now going to take off the bottom. Then she said that she was now completely naked. And Morishita asked what excited girls were doing on the phone, to which he received the answer that they were having sex on the phone, after which the young man barely pulled himself together. However, he immediately heard some sounds on the phone and wondered what this woman might be doing and why she suddenly went quiet. But Senpai suddenly said that first he should gently pinch his cheek to get the same sound if you pull it back, and then let it go. It makes such a sound. To which the young man replied that she was just mocking him because he was a virgin. But Kagaya replied that it was just a coincidence. She confessed to Morishita that she was still a virgin too, and the hero asked her where she got this crap from, and the girl said that she had seen all this in adult games and said that from today on, was no longer officially a pen pal, and now he would be her sex friend. At school, Layla asked Morishita if it was true that she and Kagaya had become hookup buddies, and he realized that Senpai had already told her everything, so he replied that it wasn't like she had imagined it. At this time, Abino-san entered the classroom and Morishita asked why she did it because there must be some reason, and the girl replied that she made him a bento and he can eat it in the courtyard with her. The guys in the class were very surprised because they couldn't believe that Morishita was dating Abe no-san, but the girl assured them that she only made bento, and Moriyama added that there was no misunderstanding, and Morishita's aikido is really incredible, but he should not forget about protection. In the courtyard of the school, a young man asked Kaguya if she made this dish for him, because it must have caused her inconvenience, to which the girl replied that the bento was completely assembled from frozen semi-finished products for the microwave, so it only took 10 minutes to prepare it. Morishita thanked her and said that it was very rare and he was happy to start eating, and after trying it, he noticed that this dish was quite good for something thawed. Suddenly, the young man noticed that Kagaya was crying. She said that she woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning to prepare this dish, and it was just, according to him, quite nothing, and it hurts her because she was just hiding her embarrassment and she prepared it as a thank you for helping. Morishita remarked that spending so much time making bento doesn't fit with her personality at all, and Kagaya replied that it seemed like she was still quite clumsy about that, but this time she would be honest with him and tell him that saying that she woke up at 2 o'clock was also a lie in fact. She didn't even get a wink of sleep. The young man understood what it meant. The embarrassing conversation last night was because of this, and the girl said that he really saved her in a way that she would never be able to repay him properly. Abino Kagaya suddenly knelt down and thanked Morishita heartily. Morishita turned to her and told her that she looked even more beautiful with a smile, and in response the girl asked him to hurry up and finish his bento. Layla Sakaguchi looked curiously at Morishita Daiki's house, although it was a fairly typical building, and she found it on the list of schoolmates' addresses that she managed to get. Because before that, she had tried many times to track the young man all the way home, but each time he eluded her. Just then, Morishita showed up with Abino Kagaya, who had become very close lately, and Layla said that it didn't matter how hardcore the two of them were as fuck buddies, but it was just gross. Kagaya calmly replied. She had come to a friend's house party today, but immediately expressed doubt that Layla probably didn't know the meaning of friend. Kagaya explained that she had heard today that Morishita-kun was having his 17th birthday and came to congratulate him, and the hero thought longingly that she had asked for a birthday party and offered to throw a party. Layla noticed that Kagaya annoyed her and was quite relaxed compared to how tense she had been lately, to which Kagaya replied that she should always be on the phone to keep in touch with Morishita, and accused Layla of being jealous of making a friend. Murashita's mother supported her son and began to prepare a treat after he told her that Senpai was coming to visit. The young man turned to Layla and invited her to come into the house with them, despite Kagaya's changed face and protests. Murashita reminded her that they were just pen pals, and Kagaya expressed her disappointment that he would only think of her that way. Layla realized that Abino was just trying to cover up her dissatisfaction with Murashita, and said that she also wanted to talk to the birthday boy about Aikido and would be happy to join the festive dinner. When the three of them went into the house, Morishita's mother was surprised that 2 girls came with her son and not one as planned. The girls initially assumed that the woman who greeted them was Morishita's sister, but he explained that it was his mother and that she dressed quite young. Kagaya noticed the gorgeous dish in the center of the table and noticed that Morishita's mom was a real pro at cooking and Lila smelled chemicals and decided that this yakisoba was flavored with hydrochloric acid. Morishita called mom's yakisoba a killer dish in terms of acidity and secrecy of ingredients, lashing out at her with gusto. And Kagaya remarked that she didn't like his tasteless jokes at all. Layla tasted yakisoba and felt a real flame in her mouth. She decided that acid was really added there. And Morishita's mother went to the kitchen to prepare the next dish. Both girls decided that this was called a lousy dinner with shitty food that had real poison in it. But mom brought the next dish and said that it would be perfect for those who like spicy food, it's chili shrimp. Kagaya laughed and turned to Layla Sakaguchi, saying that despite growing up in Italy, spicy food was clearly too much for her. And the girl asked her to try it herself because it looked spicy, but at least it didn't smell like chemicals. Kagaya spat it all out back, because eating a whole spoonful of death sauce was simply impossible for someone unaccustomed. And now Kagaya's cool image was completely destroyed. Morishita's mother asked Layla if she wasn't going to eat anything, to which the girl replied that she had a little stomach ache today. But in order not to offend the hostess, she had to choose between the killer yakisoba and the killer chili shrimp. Judging that yakisoba still has poison in its composition, she chose shrimp. The only thing Layla couldn't stand was spicy food, and the owner suggested that she try yakisoba, which was dripping with acid. And Morishita asked why she didn't like spicy food so much. The girl blushed and replied that it was all because of hemorrhoids, and Morishita apologized to her. Morishita's mom announced that it was finally time for the main event, gift-giving time, and Lila was horrified to think that the idea of coming to the birthday party empty-handed was a bad one. But it was too late to prepare anything. At this time, Kagaya handed the birthday boy a box tied with a ribbon and said that it was a gift from her and Lila, who wondered why she was covering it up. Was it just so that she wouldn't have to blush? She thought she was a cold-hearted, cold-blooded girl. But was she really that different from what she had imagined her to be? When the hostess exclaimed that after the gifts were handed out, it was time to bathe together, Layla was faced with an unexpected problem. Coming to someone else's house, she suddenly has to go to the bathroom. But Kagaya said that it's still better than eating food, and Mom said that bathing after eating is the Morishita family's motto. Kagaya looked at Layla critically and said that she understood Layla's desire not to show anyone this underdeveloped body. To which she replied, she should enjoy this work of art completely free of charge. Daiki's mom had polka dot panties, and the girls were stunned by how well they suited her. This woman was so unusual that she couldn't even be compared to them, while Daiki was happily eating yakisoba. Kagaya suggested that they stop criticizing their underwear and finally start bathing. And Lila complained that in her hometown, there is no tradition of undressing in front of other people. Kagaya was 100% sure that there were public baths in Italy for a long time. And now she wanted to undress Layla even more, which reminded her that molesting a girl was still considered sexual harassment. Kagaya, looking at Layla's figure, said that even though she was already 16, nothing had grown on her, and her body was perfectly smooth. And Layla replied that Kagaya was rather brusque. Layla said that they are not here to compete, and that everyone is different. Besides, isn't this proof that there are still children among them? Daiki's mother asked the girls exactly where the children were and what they meant. Morishita Daiki was sitting in the courtyard of the school, and addressing the girls, said that both of them had not said a word since then and what really happened in the pool. At this time, Murayama Toka came up to him and announced that she had finally found Morishita-kun so that they could eat a special dish prepared for him. In his hands, the young man saw a box of bento, and looking at the girl, he decided that one of his life goals was finally coming true, to get a homemade bento from a girl. Daiki happily agreed to taste it and found that the aura of femininity of this bento was on a completely different level. It was simply exquisite, and Murayama really liked Daiki's reaction. The class committee chair asked him if it was true that Senpai also brought him bento if they were dating, but Morishita replied that it was also a sign of appreciation and nothing more. The girl confessed that the time they were attacked by the rapist, she was terrified and shaking all over. But she remembers not fear at all, but the warmth of Morishita-kun's chest when he hugged her. Since then, she had been watching him all the time and noticed that he had made a lot of new friends. And that was why she decided to do something so that he could not be stolen from her. Murayama then asked the young man if he had any plans for Sunday, to which he replied that he was completely free on that day. Then, embarrassed, Murayama asked him to go on a date with her that day. Abino Kagaya felt that her body had become heavy, and this was the result of the formation of the 4 sacred beasts, which meant that they no longer cared what things looked like, and the forecasters were simultaneously using debilitating techniques to take the loot from her. But she couldn't believe that her older sister Sakuya had fallen so low. Sakuya told Kagaya that she didn't want to resort to such measures, but she could just obediently die for them without leaving such a bad aftertaste in their mouths. And Kagaya replied that she didn't even know that she was hated so much in the family, and why would they set her up? The older sister replied that since a long time ago, she had always tried to follow in her footsteps, and yet she was still superior in everything, so it was still a thorn in her side, and besides, her existence would reduce Sakuya's inheritance, and Kagaya asked her perplexedly if she was killing her own sister for such a pathetic reason. Sakuya exclaimed that she should die in the depths of despair, fear and hatred, and from what she had heard, Ninetales likes fear and despair, and is sure that after being betrayed by her own sister, she will become an incredible delicacy for him. Kagaya thought with sadness that for 3 consecutive days she had not defeated a single demon, and considering the last count, she was in last place, and therefore she should pass on the sharp sword passed down from generation to generation as a parting gift, because the results seemed to have already been summed up. Her father informed her that, according to the rules, she would become an offering. Kagaya asked him if he was aware of the circumstances that had taken place this time, and her father replied that he had definitely heard that Sakuya had united the other candidates and 4 of them had prevented Kagaya. Her father turned to her older sister and praised her for doing a good job because with this precious sacrifice, the Abino family would be safe for the next 2 centuries. And Kagaya informed her father that she knew that Sakuya-san had received a marriage proposal from the main branch of the family and was sacrificed because of it. Her father replied that strength was everything and her eccentric speech and behavior were to blame for it. So even the minimal appearance of family love was thrown to the wind, and Sakuya approached her younger sister and offered her heroin to make her commit suicide, thus easing her pain. Kagaya told her older sister that just thinking about the same blood flowing through their veins made her sick, and Sakuya replied that she was trying to stay innocent until the very end, but she was still glad that her sister was finally going to die. She followed her father and wished that she could enjoy Kagaya's pain to her heart's content until the end. Meanwhile, Morishita Daiki was looking forward to the Sunday when the meeting with the chairman was scheduled. He just couldn't wait any longer. At this moment, Senpai approached him, who thought that her enemy was called a god. But however, if it was Morishita who received great power from another world, then everything might work out, and asked him to give her a moment. The girl asked him, as a pen pal, what it means, and the young man replied, it means friends sending messages to each other. Kagaya asked Morishita to spend a couple of hours of her time on the upcoming Sunday, to which Morishita replied that he had already promised a classmate to go to the movies with her. Abendo felt a burning sensation in her chest and a rapid pulse. Then she asked Daiki if this event was more important than her request, and he replied that they had agreed on it beforehand. The girl decided that she couldn't ask him to risk his life to protect her as well, so she said goodbye to Morishita-kun and left. Murashita promised to see her again next week, and Kagaya thought with sadness that by next week's arrival, she would definitely be out of this world. This is most likely the last time she will see sunlight, and she feels that the mountain is the territory of that god who is already awakening. And even though she could have sworn that she was prepared for it, it was still quite unpleasant. Kagaya felt that even as a last wish, she couldn't rely on Daiki's help. She couldn't afford to selfishly ask him to save her. After all, they had been pen pals all along. And now she could afford to send him one last message. It didn't last long, but she was having fun, and if they ever met again, she would be happy if he could become her true friend. Abino Kagaya now had no regrets, and was ready to face the inevitable. There were 2 earth spiders that were going to rob her of her powers and then torture her to death, and even if she was strengthened by Moshida-kun, she could only defeat one of them. But the girl wasn't going to give up and die at all. She was going to fight until the very end. Kagaya suddenly saw Layla, who said that she couldn't handle these opponents on her own, and she would never let such a perfect hunting ground out of her sight if her mission was to destroy monsters. Besides, if she died before she repaid her debt for the birthday incident, it would leave a terrible aftertaste. And as far as she knew, The earth spider had battered her badly last time, but she can only help her with earth spiders, and she is not going to commit a pair of love suicide with her. And does she really have no one who could help her? Meanwhile, Morishita and Murayama were happily walking around the city, discussing the movie they had just watched. And finally, Daiki admitted that he was very surprised by her invitation today and asked why she had come so unexpectedly. The girl honestly replied that her boyfriend Sakagami-kun, the captain of the baseball club, cheated on her, and therefore she was going to pay him back today. Murayama told the young man that she and Abino-san weren't dating, and in that case he obviously didn't mind, and then he felt her soft chest, but at the same time, the phone rang. It was a message from Abino-san, and Morishita, after reading it, quickly said goodbye to the chairman, and said that he urgently needed to leave. Murayama resentfully asked, because Abino-san is not his girlfriend, and the young man replied that she is only a pen pal and a terrible pain in the ass, which is impossible to understand. She is selfish and persistent, like a stalker, constantly fussing to no avail and digging her own grave. Murayama took a side and decided that this girl was an important friend to him, and Morishita decided that if he didn't go there right away, he wouldn't be able to be a hero anymore. After which he left the confused Murayama, promising to return soon. The hero activated the enemy detection skill and, having detected the strongest response, moved to the flight stage. People on the streets of the city thought that a plane flew very low, and Murayama Toka exclaimed that she was abandoned again. Lila and Kagaya were kneeling wearily, and Abino asked if it was time to stop, but her partner said that the fun was just beginning, because these earth spiders are pretty tough nuts. Lila noticed that she was covered in wounds, and the wounds were deadly. And even the Dominion's healing abilities couldn't handle them, and these small creatures took a lot on themselves. Meanwhile, 2 more earth spiders appeared, and Kagaya advised Layla to back off, and not do anything like that for her. But the girl replied that she wasn't doing it just for her. Layla said that even though this is against all Vatican principles, she will now drop all prohibitions and use the spear of the sacred relic. The girl activated her full spiritual armor and exclaimed that she would destroy all these monsters. Kagaya thought that the spear, a sacred relic that had been passed down from generation to generation in the Vatican, couldn't possibly have been brought here, as it was part of the Dominion's special forces, but it couldn't possibly have ended up in Layla's hands. However, the fact was that the Longinus Saint spear was in the hands of this winged girl. Suddenly, both girls were filled with indescribable horror because what they saw was for the first time for them. It was a top-class Yuki ghost that was stronger than the earth spider and the exhausted Layla, even with the sacred relic, was unlikely to be able to do anything. The monster's scary face was approaching the girls. Abano Koguya used a fire talisman, extreme hellfire. This was the last of the techniques that the girl was capable of. However, even with this skill, she didn't even manage to scratch this evil monster. And then the girl decided that she would inevitably accept her defeat. Just then, Layla rose into the air and used her holy spear to stab the ghost's head. The monster fell to the ground, and Layla said that it was pretty tough for a small asshole. Kagaya was surprised by her recovery abilities, to which the girl replied that she couldn't let down her expectations. Suddenly, Layla was sent flying several meters away from a flick on the forehead of a new monster that appeared. He said it was amazing, and a shiver went through Kagaya from deep inside. And the monster went on and said that he never thought they would beat Goki, and it was a great performance. It was 9 tails. And he added that he didn't know that there would be such interesting people in this era who deserved his praise. Kagaya, looking at the ugly appearance of the 9 tails, ironically said that she thought that a delicate and sweet man appeared, and he seemed to be very condescending. The monster replied that when people met him, they all behaved the same and pretended to be brave. And then they begged for their lives, and everything remains as before, regardless of the era. But he recognizes their strength and intends to give them a reward. Kagaya felt her body not move, and Ninetails announced that he was going to personally devour them, that he could hear their screams of fear and pleading. Ninetails summoned his demons and allowed them to possess the girls to soften the meat before he devoured them. They wouldn't play with them for more than 3 days and 3 nights, so they would get the most out of it. But Ninetails' last words were drowned out by a deafening explosion and the appearance of a stranger. Morishita brought his weapon down on the monster. Ninetails fell to the ground from the impact, forming a huge crater. Daiki angrily exclaimed that he was the geek and bastard who made his girlfriend cry. Ninetales grunted in satisfaction and said that it was great to experience so much pain, because this was the first time it had happened since it was sealed 1,000 years ago, and he should praise a human. And Daiki replied that it should be a great honor for the shit fox. Ninetales said admiringly that he was the one who was able to deal damage to a god, and he was the first victim that he would be able to enjoy for the first time in a long time, and the hero thought that even though he copied the modern, significantly weakened version, but he sent him flying with all his might using the sacred sword Excalibur, and if he was an ordinary monster, he would have been wiped out by now. Murashita assumed that the monster's title of god was not meant to be used as a joke. But at that time, Ninetales asked the young man who he was related to, because there was no point in pretending to be innocent. The monster suggested that he might also be a god-eater, and the moment the guy was able to deal damage to him, he probably felt his divine spirit. Or maybe he was from the sun goddess Amaterasu, the southern barbarian sect, to which the hero replied that he was just his friendly neighbor, Morishita Daiki. Ninetales assumed that Daiki continued to feign ignorance until the very end, and in that case, to make it easier for him to speak, he would torture the words out of him. The monster lunged at the youth, but the latter stopped both of its attacks, and Ninetales decided that his previous attack was not pure luck at all. The fight took a serious turn, and both fighters got down to business. Morishita actually surprised the Ninetales. He unleashed a barrage of punches from above, and it was a simple and deadly attack. The hero slowed down a little and thought that the monster's attacks could only be prevented in the position that he had taken, and the monster decided that the man had finally given up and given up his fight. The monster had broken through Morishita's defenses, and it seemed that its physical abilities far exceeded Daika's current ones. Daiki saw that Kagaya was ready to intervene, but he forbade her to do so, and Ninetales said that she could watch. And after he broke the loser's limbs, he would slowly devour him in front of her. This is the power of God. Let people now feel this vexation and hatred, this utter hopelessness. This is the greatest offering to God, and they should enjoy it to the full for the opposition. Murashita replied that he had actually given up hope in him while activating the physical ability enhancement skill. The monster rushed at the young man and knocked him to the ground, but with the help of a special skill and physical abilities increased many times. And he never heard that at least in some battle this skill was not used. With an elusive movement, Daiki released the grip and tore off part of the Ninetales' body, knocking it to the ground. This god couldn't understand what had happened to him, but Daiki explained to him and said that he had only torn off one of his ears, and it wasn't such a big deal. Morishita claimed that he was too small a fish for a supposed god. Daiki, in truth, was also scared because this monster called himself a god, and he's still no match for the goddess who reincarnated him, but based on this guy's status, he's a bit stronger than Morishita was when he was still nothing special, and he probably could be in the top 32 in the imperial capital's sword competition, and if he enchanted a weapon with an attack skill, he could defeat its princess. But it turned out that being afraid was a waste of time, and the best thing to do was just beat the shit out of this monster. But he just couldn't end it all that easily. At this time, Ninetales came to his senses and was glad that the guy had missed such a perfect opportunity. But Daiki suggested that he stop mumbling and just attack. The monster was offended by such a slight from the human and rushed to attack. He asked Morishita Daiki if he was aware of the true power of God. He used the fox god's rage dance skill. It was a technique that consisted of a terrifyingly fast combination of punches, and even Morishita-kun found it difficult to fend off this barrage, and the monster thought that it was too childish to use all its strength against an ordinary person. However, Kagaya was happy to see Morishita come out of the battle without getting a scratch, and asked her when she was going to show him this fox god. Ninetales was in real shock and couldn't believe that this guy was unharmed after his phenomenal attack, and Daiki informed the monster that now that he was done, he could make his move and instantly disappeared. The monster frantically searched for its opponent and couldn't find it until it received a serious blow to the face. He was amazed that he hadn't received such serious injuries in a long time, and even forgot the taste of humiliation. And Daiki decided to end everything here and now. However, the fox stated that he hadn't shown all of his true strength yet, and he was probably sure that he was a melee fighter, but he was actually a spellcaster, and had the most vicious spell, Impenetrable Circle. The young man thought that he didn't really take this monster seriously, and if he still had a trump card up his sleeve, it meant that he might still be much stronger than the Demon Lord. as did the monster who reproached himself for the stupidity of refusing to use his true power against the enemy. Same caliber. The monster cast a spell, and Murashita saw the Nine-Tails' defensive barrier. The monster was exultant. This impenetrable circle that should repel any physical or magical attack was a spell from the legends that caused many strong practitioners to be defeated and devoured. The monster thought that he now had the power of a god. As long as the barrier protected him from any attacks, he could use as many attacking spells as he wanted, and Daiki was a little surprised. But after all, he knew this technique very well. It was the most common advanced defensive magic, and every high-class priest was able to use it. Besides, it was considered middle-class magic, and his princess used it all the time. Morishita only needed to break through this impenetrable barrier. But the monster laughed and said that it didn't matter how high its attack power was, because this barrier would repel anything. And it was surprising that a practitioner like him couldn't realize this, and must have overestimated the youth. Daiki asked Nine-Tails, but he would obviously be satisfied if he still broke his barrier, and so he wouldn't hold back any longer. Morishita activated all of his skills. Hero Attack, Dragon Spirit, Magic Spirit, Divine Diamond and War God Power, Unstoppable Power and Supreme Ruler Attack, Nuclear Blessing, Quantum Decomposition and Absolute Annihilation. The hero was going to use all his strength. This attack was something incredible and powerful. The monster realized that its barrier was broken and it was in a dangerous position. And Daiki asked it calmly, "Will it do now?" The monster asked Morishita what it was, and the hero replied that it was just a full-force strike, and if he has any secret weapons he better use them quickly or he will just destroy them with brute force. Nine-Tails refused to believe in such a situation, but he admitted that he was no match for Daiki in combat capabilities, and the young man urged him to surrender. The monster replied that he couldn't give up when he was in such a winning position, because for a naive knight in shining armor like him, it would be quite a suitable punishment. To see his precious hostages torn to pieces without any resistance. Kaguya saw that Nine-Tails had created a clone of herself, and even though she knew that she couldn't defeat him, she refused to be a burden to Morishita-kun, so she boldly charged at the beast. Lila followed her, realizing that the stupid fox had wasted too much time, and she couldn't afford to kill Kaguya until she paid off her debt. With the help of the vacuum cut, the youngsters were able to dodge the Nine-Tails trap. But he told them to take a look at his new surprise. The girls saw that they could land directly in the paws of the 9 earth spiders, and they were currently powerless against these animals. But suddenly they noticed that the spiders had suddenly disappeared. The Nine-Tails proudly said that they were specially bred masking spiders, and they wouldn't be able to dodge anything they couldn't see. And Morishita realized that it was an optical camouflage skill. Layla hung in the air and held Kaguya in her arms, who was completely paralyzed, and the girl could not fly with her, which made the monster very happy, who said that the more victims, the more fun it was, and he intended to catch them both. Layla couldn't see the invisible spiders, and Abino warned her and commanded her movements, which allowed her to avoid the attacks of these animals. The monster was at a loss to figure out how practitioners of their level could dodge invisible spiders. Meanwhile, Morishita used a zero-type vacuum incision and rushed to the girl's rescue. It was a combination of Abino-senpai's enemy detection skill and Layla's evasion ability, so the monster underestimated them. However, Nine-Tails didn't want to give up just like that. He felt that his inability to capture hostages was nothing more than a simple bad luck, but their forces were equal. However, Morishita didn't agree with him and stated that his mysteriously created copy of himself and the invisible earth spiders placed were revealed from the very beginning, and furthermore, the girls easily figured out his shitty trap. In other words, he was checkmated at the moment when he decided to get his hands on his friends, and now he has no more trump cards up his sleeve, so now he can either give up or continue his useless attempts. Nine-Tails couldn't believe that a god was defeated by insignificant humans, and Morishita decided to beat the shit out of this fox, no longer holding back. He activated the hero's skills. Strengthening physical abilities, piercing flesh, breaking bones, and accumulating strength. The monster was not so simple. It was waiting for the young man to open up with his last move, and he would use his last trump card. A sacrificial technique that turns all his magic power into combat power. It doesn't matter how many questionable secret techniques Morishita uses. After all, there are no physical limits for him to overcome, and at a time like this, even a fierce god can't evade his magic. and his final strike will definitely destroy the guy. However, Daiki was there faster than Ninetales thought, and he was unlucky enough to get a great punch to the jaw. The monster's body soared into the air, and Kagaya and Lila stared in surprise and horror. Ninetales realized that he had barely managed to put up a defense the moment Morishita hit him, and now he decided to use the opportunity to escape. Daiki decided that since this monster was so high, there shouldn't be any problems, and because of what happened earlier, he was able to train his magic powers. However, he needs to be very precise and destroy this evil animal, and the forbidden technique, which can only be used by the hero, will help him in this. Ninetales knew that he was going to die, because the hero used the incredible skill Doom Hunter. The monster realized that the magic of this incredible man had caught up with him high in the sky. The Doom Hunter destroys everything within a 200-meter radius. And now there was no need to even check whether the Ninetales were still alive or not, and the ghost extermination was over. Morishita realized that the monster's last strike was a pure magic attack, and if he had taken it, it would probably have hurt like hitting a table with his little finger. 2 days had passed since the victory at Ninetales, and Abe no Kagaya was treating Morishita-kun to the highest quality green tea in her cabin at the edge of the forest. Daiki remarked that it was strange to be in a house made of cardboard boxes, but it was important that Kagaya kept the destruction of the Ninetales a secret, defying the family and the organization by saying that they had calculated the monster's respawn time incorrectly, and that the fact that a strong spirit was beaten out of its shit like a pathetic high school student would sound like even more delusional. And naturally they didn't accept Senpai coming home alive, so she left the house with what she had on her. The young man asked her what she had been eating all this time, and the girl replied that she was making cookies out of ground acorns, and Morishita said that he just wanted to make sure if she really came from a prestigious family, to which Kagaya replied that she did, but right now she only had 7 yen left in her purse. Now she is poor and feels like this for the first time in her life. Then Morishita offered to lend her money and advised the girl to return home, but Kagaya rejected this offer and called her family sick bastards who are ready to pump their youngest daughter with heroin and make her a sex slave for the spirit. Then Koguya admitted that she made a mistake when she broke a bottle of heroin, and she could have driven it for a lot of money. And she also said that she was already at the limit in many ways, and yesterday's downpour damaged her house, and then Morishita again offered her his savings. Koguya suddenly asked him if she was a pretty girl, and when Daiki confirmed it, she said that using this, she should sell herself. But she certainly didn't like it, and that was why she needed Morishita-kun's help. First, he would sell himself to a handsome guy in a gay club, and she would make a deal with them herself. And if he was willing to do that for her, then she would be determined to sell herself. But after that, Daiki admitted that she was completely out of her mind. The girl replied that she was in a desperate situation, but he should not worry about it, and she would sell her virginity for at least 100,000 yen. Morishita advised her to put aside thoughts of prostitution and refrain from making hasty decisions without discussing everything with him. The next day, Morishita walked down the street and thought about how much trouble Senpai's stubborn attitude caused. And as he passed an expensive cafe, where a cup of coffee cost 1,500 yen, he thought with sadness that this happens when there are people sleeping in cardboard boxes. Suddenly, inside the cafe, he saw Abe no Kagaya sitting, and he asked her why the one who had eaten chestnuts yesterday was now sitting and elegantly drinking expensive coffee. And the girl told him that she had sold it, even though she had not slept a wink last night. Morishita was indignant, and said that even though she was pinned to the wall, but to sell something so valuable so casually for cheap is unacceptable. And the girl replied that she really slightly lost the price. However, they agreed on a price of 1.5 billion yen. At this, Morishita sank into a chair and said that only someone like an oil magnate could afford to buy her virginity for 1.5 billion. To which Kagaya said that she did not think of selling her virginity, but sold the treasure. Because he must have heard about the Muramashi and Masamian blades. They are not only a national treasure, but also a top-level magic exorcism weapon, and this field is full of buyers. Moreover, Leila Sakaguchi is currently in the city, and so she made a lot of useful connections. And then the news was broadcast on television that several swords that are a national treasure were stolen from the prefectural shrine. Kagaya calmly explained that the Dominion's strength had been greatly reduced recently, and they needed bladed weapons, so by making a deal with them, she hit a huge jackpot, and they also paid her the entire amount at once. Morishita was startled and asked the girl if there were no guards there, to which Kaguya replied that she was helped by his skills in detecting the enemy in disguise, and besides, Lila put in a few words for her in front of the highest officials from the Vatican, and now they will not start a sudden hunt for her. The High Priest Abino-san, her father, was declared the victim, and now he's in big trouble. It seems that all the riches will be taken from him, and he will work as a priest in a sanctuary, on an isolated island, and this upsets her a little. Although, in her opinion, this is too lenient punishment because there are so many refugees around, and her family, consisting of real bastards, will live a wonderful life, despite the suffering of so many people around. But then, Morishita reminded her that she just recently lived the same life. Kaguya confessed that she also stole something from her older sister and cousin, so it's a total mess, and now she's decided to buy a penthouse in a high-rise building in front of the station. And Daiki reminded her again that she was judging undeserved earnings a moment ago. Morishita decided that he could get a coffee too, thinking that the problem was solved. But the girl said that the most important thing was still not sorted out, and today they were skipping school. Kaguya suggested that the young man go to the coast with her right now. When they were alone on the beach, Kaguya asked what dish she liked best, not counting her mom's cooking, and Daiki said that he probably liked rolls. And Kaguya suggested that he go to a super popular restaurant next time. The girl said that it would be summer in a couple of months, and asked what type of swimwear Morishita liked best, to which he replied that he preferred a striped bikini, and Kaguya said that she expected this from a virgin like him. Morishita expressed concern that she was acting strange lately, and Kaguya replied that, after all, they were friends and they were already quite close. After all, he was going to get a wife in the future, so that he would tell his wife if he wanted to take a bath, have dinner, or her. When the boy chose the latter answer, Kaguya suggested that he buy condoms next time. Morishita asked why she was talking about it right now, and Kaguya told him that she was a virgin bitch and proud of it. Then she asked if he didn't think that virginity was a disadvantage for someone who fought on the battlefield, and if they had lost that time she would have been wet and slimy, and Morishita said that she described everything too clearly. Kaguya said that in their society, the market only values virgins as victims, and so she thought that she should lose her virginity, and by the way, if she lost her virginity, she would turn from a virgin bitch into a very ordinary one. But does he want to lose his virginity as soon as possible? Murashita replied that he might seem like a hopeless romantic, but he thinks that his first time should be with the girl he loves, and Kaguya asked in surprise, so he thinks that after the first time, anyone can be his partner? He added that he didn't want to have a relationship with someone who just happened to be on hand. At which point, Kaguya grabbed his face and asked if he really thought she would carelessly talk to him about something like that. She's got a twisted body and a bitchy heart, and if her virginity is taken away, she's just a normal fucking bitch, but she's his fucking bitch. The girl was annoyed and surprised that Daiki still didn't understand if he was so thick-headed. And since that was the case, she should tell him everything in plain text. She looked the young man in the eyes and asked him to become his friend groom. Murashita couldn't believe that she was serious, but the girl asked him if he hated her. And even though she was 100% not the one he was looking for, Murashita realized that they were getting closer without even realizing it. Then, Morishita decided to answer her also seriously and stated that, even if they start dating, they don't know anything about each other, and therefore, why not start getting to know each other better as friends first? Kaguya complained that he forced her to say something like that, but he wanted to remain ordinary friends. And Daiki added that they would be more than friends, but less than lovers. And the girl agreed. Kaguya stated that her right hand was very lonely and asked him to hold hands, because they are now more than friends. They held hands and walked in a completely different direction from the station. But Kaguya said that they only had one stop to go, and they could walk that short distance by holding hands. The girl turned to Morishita Kunikin and reminded him that she was betrayed by her father and older sister, and it was very sad. She even thought that her heart would break. But now she doesn't care anymore because that day in that place he came for her, and now they are walking with him holding hands, and that alone makes her happy. Even if she could start living anew. And she had to go through a similar betrayal again. She would definitely go the same way for this moment. Besides, the words that she was going to say to him would never be heard by anyone else. And even to him she would never repeat them again. So he had to listen to her carefully. Abe no Kagaya stated quite seriously that she was infatuated with Morishita-kun and loved him very much. Murayama Tuka is a very ordinary high school student who holds the post of manager of a baseball club, a little concerned about too large a breast size. But her family's circumstances cannot be called ordinary. Her father, an office worker, started investing securities when the girl was still in elementary school and initially used only the earned capital in trading, but then to recoup losses, he went into trading with his head, and at first, everything went well. Without realizing it, he spent all his savings and started borrowing money from relatives, and when those bridges were burned, he borrowed at high interest rates, and when that too was not enough, he borrowed money from loan sharks and having reached the point of no return, jumped in front of a train. But the family's failures did not end there, and loan sharks came to their house for debts, demanding to pay the remaining part of the debt, which was partially repaid by Murayama's father's insurance. At her mother's timid protests, the Yakuza representative yelled at her and ordered her to comply with their demands. The thug said that it was definitely not enough for a madam to work part-time to pay off the rest of the debt, and he suggested that TikTok work out the debt with his friend at an exclusive club that provides services to gentlemen who prefer young women, because after working there for only 10 years, they can easily pay off the entire debt. The girl's mother reminded that her daughter is only a high school student, and the representative of the Yakuza told his assistant to make a mayhem in the room. This big guy broke the dishes, and the representative said that no one knows when even an accident can happen to relatives, and he does not guarantee that this will not happen again to Madame Toggle or her little brother. The representative's bodyguard approached him and said that since he was going to sell the girl anyway, would he mind if he tried it first? For which he was mercilessly beaten with his own golf club. The boss edifiedly said that even idiots like him should think what they are saying. After all, this girl has not even agreed yet, and how can you be called a professional if he is going to sell her after raping his own product? Everyone should be responsible, and this is directly related to customer satisfaction. And after that, the Yakuza representative apologized for the staff and offered to end the conversation, but pointed out that his patience was also not unlimited. He agreed to wait until tomorrow while he and his daughter thought things over carefully, and then he threw a small amount of money on the table in the form of a symbolic memorial offering. Murayama Toka slowly walked down the city street and could not believe that it all happened to her because until recently she had a family and a boyfriend, and she considered herself the most ordinary happy girl. But the guy cheated on her, her father committed suicide, and starting tomorrow, she will make a living selling your body. Unexpectedly, they came face to face with Morishita-kun, who was walking with Abeno, and Taka thought resignedly that the young man was dating this girl who was richer than her. The young man asked her if she was all right, and although Taka knew that she would only bring Morishita-kun problems with her actions, she still fell to her knees and asked him for help. The girl explained everything in detail to Daiki and Kagaya, and Abeno couldn't believe that this was the girl who was the head of her class's committee. She took a closer look and noticed that her face and chest were quite average. And instead of a chairman with special skills, it was just a plain pathetic fool who approached Morishita-kun and assumed that he knew about loans since his father worked in a credit union. The young man asked the girl when her father died and when he heard that it happened 2 months ago. He asked her if she knew what it was to give up the right of inheritance. Because according to this law, she is not obliged to pay them a single yen. She can file a lawsuit and get rid of the debt completely, even though there is a time frame for that, but she should have plenty of time. And Kagaya casually said that Murayama doesn't deserve sympathy anyway because she pushed herself into a corner with her weakness and stupidity and was forcibly bullied. The strong always devours the weak, and this is an incredibly common scene that happens every day in the world, to which Topuka confessed that she is weak and stupid, but they are talking about the Yakuza, which she can hardly oppose anything. Abeno Kagaya philosophically said that weakness itself is one of the sins, and she does not deserve pity. She also has teeth and nails. She could pick out their eyes and bite off their noses, and if she remains the same, she will literally just be eaten. But they would still help her, and it wasn't out of pity. And Murashita asked Murayama where the Yakuza's office was. The heroes stated that they were going to have a little chat with them, after which they went to the city center and soon entered the office, where the person who came to the house to Toka asked if she really decided and did not wait until tomorrow. Murashita explained to the squishy guy that according to the law Murayama-san would give up the right to inherit, to which the bandit replied that he was brought into the adult world, And this is a terribly complicated thing, and it would be great if children did not interfere with the debt agreements of adults. According to him, a high school student can't have anything but a superficial knowledge, and in the end everything is decided by the creditor. So everything will be resolved by mutual agreement when Murayama-san pays off his debt. Daiki said that they didn't agree with this, and they came to discuss it in good faith. So he demands that the Yakuza representative explain that he did not say so. The man seemed angry and told Morishita not to come to the Yakuza office anymore to make jokes and throw out random phrases about the laws. They are a criminal syndicate and they are outlaws, so he should hurry to go home while he is still in a good mood. After that, the bandit lit a cigarette and Kagaya told him to stop doing it because she does not tolerate tobacco smoke. Morishita once again offered to resolve everything peacefully because according to the law, the Murayama family will give up the right to inherit, and this egregious case will not go to court, and these words completely angered the Yakuza representative. He got up from his chair and said that they really underestimate them, and their business is based on their image, and if the crime syndicate goes along with such pathetic high school students, it will be a bad example, so they should apologize, and then he will let them go home in one piece. To which Kagaya remarked that it seems the crime syndicate is always bullying the weak in this office. Kagaya said that in the case of a real crime syndicate, a couple dozen police officers with automatic rifles would slaughter them within 30 minutes. They wouldn't be able to defeat even the most ordinary police officer. How did they even shamelessly call themselves some kind of force? She alone is enough to beat the shit out of them. And the girl offered to attack her. And the bandit told the security guard to make these high school students regret that they were born, but not to damage the beautiful goods. The girl decided to introduce herself and said that her name was Abanuno, and asked the Yakuza if even after learning that she was from this family, they were going to lay hands on her, but the bandit ordered his bone crusher to take her. Morishita asked the girl to wait a bit, and the bandit thought that he was finally going to apologize, but Daiki said that they didn't intend to resolve everything peacefully from the very beginning. But they tried, because otherwise it would be quite a hassle, and after that he asked Kagaya not to overdo it and kill these idiots. She replied that one who lived in the same world of absolute darkness would teach them a lesson in true power. Her words did not differ from her actions, and the bandits got what they deserved. They could only get 0 points for their strength. Morishita looked at the immobilized guards and decided that Senpai's fighting strength was an order of magnitude higher than that of an ordinary person, and if they had lived in the Sengoku period, she would actually be able to challenge 1,000 men, and the syndicate representative trembled in fear. Realizing that now it was his turn, the man had completely lost the will to fight, and Morishita expressed the hope that the Murayama family's debt situation would be resolved after they gave up their inheritance rights, while Tantaka was surprised to think that the seniors hadn't given up an inch to the Yakuza. The girl sincerely thanked the young people for their help, and Kagaya replied that it was not worth thanking. She was just sweeping disgusting cockroaches off the streets. They should be grateful that she did not kill them. Layla Sakaguchi wanted to know the whole truth about the Yakuza's fight with Kagaya, and she wanted to join them in this fight against the syndicate after all. It would be great if they didn't get interrupted. Lila was thrilled that Kagaya was really good at fighting, and that they wouldn't be able to pretend ignorance anymore. But Morishita asked her to explain what she was talking about, and the girl explained that she was developing a get-rich-quick scheme. Morishita told Murayama that all of this had actually happened, and that the situation he had told her about yesterday had happened. So now she should leave everything to him. There were uninvited Yakuza guests at the Murayama family home who accused the hostess of sending them children. But you can't just take money from a big Yakuza boss and then easily get rid of the inheritance. The bandit's hand, raised over the woman's head, was stopped by Morishita, who easily predicted their actions, and the young man advised them to leave in order to avoid unpleasant consequences for themselves. But the bandits refused. They rushed at the guy who had previously dealt with their colleague Shimabukuro-san, take revenge on him. However, the entire group was soon immobilized, and only one of the bandits pulled out a knife. And Murashita reproachfully remarked that it was not good for a professional to use a knife against an ordinary high school student. And after that he took the weapon and stuck it in the assailant's thigh. After Daiki dealt with the guests, Murayama Toka was convinced that he was actually a master of Aikido, and the young man wondered what the Yakuza would do now if violence didn't work, and he assumed the worst-case scenario. At the Yakuza offices, the boss called in the battered Shimabukuro and asked if he had received any information from the guys they sent to Murayama's house. In the end, they gathered the most notorious villains to send them to Morishita's house, and if they can't deal with someone strong, then you just need to hit his family. At this time, Kagaya easily dealt with the thugs in the penthouse, who also turned out to be criminals, although they thought they could deal with her with guns. Whatever the case, she would like them to have some time to react, so that this magnificent sword in her hands would think that it was being neglected. At the Yakuza office, they couldn't figure out what had happened to the fighters, and the boss thought they were high, and just at that time, detectives from the Sakurada division knocked on the door. Nurishita explained to Tuka that this was all. Criminal organizations initially could only survive by hiding from the police, and as soon as they cross paths with citizens they come to an end. And even if it wasn't her fault, they took advantage of her weakness, and what happened to her family was unfortunate. At this time, Kagaya entered the room and aggressively attacked Morishita-kun, asking him, "What was all this about?" Lila asked with a puzzled expression what the police were doing here, and Kagaya said that the damn piece of shit personally called her and hit Morishita hard on the head. Lila exclaimed in disappointment that this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity was now disappearing because of him, and Kagaya asked how he dared to take matters into his own hands when the information came in that the Yakuza leader had run away with the car. Kagaya cheered up and said that it looks like they still have a chance, and they need to hurry up and find the leader by detecting the enemy. After that, they caught a taxi, and Kagaya said that they are going to kidnap this Yakuza. The girl was sure that he had all the necessary money with him. After that, she activated the spatial section skill so that the taxi driver would not hear them, and said that the government and the country did not officially recognize the existence of the Abeno family or the Dominion, and they are extraterritorial, that is, underground organizations. At school, they were taught that in the past the government was ruled by a shaman, but in reality this person had superpowers and he ruled from the shadows with brute force. And with the development of civilization, science and military tactics evolved, and the complete domination in the past disappeared. But nevertheless, their forces still have to be reckoned with. Kagaya added that they entered into an agreement at the beginning of the 20th century and are just an organization that fights only with ghosts. They do not show up in public, do not get involved unnecessarily with politics, the government and ordinary citizens, and in return the government also does not interfere in their affairs. However, as you might expect, any reckless actions against citizens will eventually lead to a high-level court, but in the case of someone from the criminal world, the situation is completely different, and the implication is that the decision is entirely up to her, including murder. They'd worked out an excellent scheme to get the money out here, too, but all those preparations had been wasted, because he'd called the cops. And this Yakuza, who'd raised a lot of money on legal loans, was bound to be punished. And besides, they couldn't miss the chance to get rich fast. And the Vatican's maintenance was limited. And besides, moreover, if you see money on the ground, you must pick it up. Meanwhile, the Yakuza thought with horror that the secret organization Abeno actually exists. And this is not an urban legend. And after that, he asked Shimabukuro if he had brought a machine gun with him. At this time, the door to the hotel room shook under powerful blows, and the bandits realized that they were already here, although no one knew about their place of stay. Finally, after breaking the door handle, the young men burst into the room, and the Yakuza pulled out their guns, to which Kagaya said it was a waste of bullets. Shimabukuro was immediately hit on the head with the butt of the sword, and the boss ordered him to fill these high school students with lead, because the blow with the butt is not so strong. Several bullets hit Layla Sakaguchi, which, despite the bandits' joy, did not cause her much harm. And the girl only complained of a slight pain, and said that no matter how blessed she was, he was now finished. The girl was angry because she didn't have many spare sets of school uniforms, and besides, she still felt pain, and so she gave the Yakuza a great punch to the jaw. Morishita told the bandit boss that he screwed up, and Kagaya added that such bastards don't learn anything, and the war won't end until one side is completely destroyed, and the Yakuza replied that they don't understand anything, and it will never end. There are an incredible number of syndicate leaders all over the country. They will hunt them down 24 hours a day, and their families and friends will also fall under their control and be destroyed. But the bandit immediately received a knockout blow from Kagaya and fell silent. Then, Abeno picked up a pair of scissors and said she intended to force him to reveal the location of the hidden money, or she would quickly proceed to terrible torture. The police detective at the hotel asked the police officer who the Yakuza were shooting with here, and he replied that it was some high school students, but the investigator asked him not to joke and went to look for witnesses. He found the gangsters in the room, a rose sticking out of one of them's ass, and the young men were already far away, and their jackpot was about 50 million yen. Layla said that if they shared everything equally, there should be no complaints. And Morishita said that if they wanted to share the money, they should give Murayama some of it. Even the insurance she'd paid for her father's death had been taken away from her, and in that case, the money would be a kind of compensation for her, and he couldn't bring himself to take it. To which Layla indignantly exclaimed that he was the only one who wanted to remain a saint, and Kagaya said that for the first time since losing her own, she understood the importance of, she loves money of course. But she's not a miser, and it's still stolen money, so they'll tell Tuka that the Yakuza kindly returned it, and she'll accept it. Morishita was very surprised by the amount of money. Abino said that it was about 570 million yen in total. And the Yakuza said that it was natural because children pay their parents' debts. They just visited the headquarters of their main crime syndicate to talk face to face, and they had very peaceful talks. But no one died. And it was also a surprise for them to see such a large number of weapons and grenades. Their leader gave up after they defeated 36 of the strongest Yakuza. And it is obvious that they would not have made such a fuss if it wasn't for the benefits. And since this work was done on behalf of Abino, then she will take 370 million, and Layla will take 200 million for himself. Morishita asked where is his part, to which Kagaya replied that this time he didn't do anything, and how low could he fall if he decided to grab something for himself after that. The young man resentfully said that in this case, there was no need to wake him up so early today. And Kagaya calmed him down and told him not to worry, because now she would pay for each of their dates, and even be willing to pay for the wedding and subsequent living expenses. She asked Daiki if he thought it was a very reasonable dividend. Daiki found out that Murayama was studying law again, and the girl confirmed that she didn't want to be weak and not be able to do anything. And besides, this way she would be able to figure out what to do in different situations. And Lila realized that thunder attack during the battle with the Nine Tails wasn't one of those skills the world. Lila realized that there could be no mistake. And this guy was actually a hero from another world. It was that big brother.